This is funny. You're talking about civilization, and my mind immediately jumped to the Ted Kaczynski energy of like, yes, civilization forces you to do all this shit. It forces you to have transportation. It forces you to get vaccinated as a child for whatever diseases they vaccinate you for while you're a crying baby. It forces all these other cultural and societal norms on you that are civilized.
Chop your dick skin off.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that one, but I thought it was a little controversial. But like,
that's why we're here, baby.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
Welcome back, Internet. This is three averagely intelligent dudes discussing dangerous ideas. And today we have two very dangerous topics, as usual. First, we're going to start off talking about a little bit of corporate legislation and the tie-ins between corporations, big corporations, and government, and how we're seeing them kind of move along the same flow of the river, and what we can do to kind of stem that, and if we feel like we should all go along with that.
Or if we even have a choice.
If we're just lost in the sauce. And we're also going to talk about what is racism.
Yeah, doing a little definition diving on racism, and we're going to talk a lot about intent, context, and my favorite, nuance.
Nuance. I'm going to clip out how many times you say nuance in all of our
4.
episodes.
Oh, all of our episodes?
Oh, yeah.
Thousands. Thousands. I use that word way too often.
It's going to be great, so we hope you guys stay tuned for the whole thing, and let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah. Let's go.
Excited.
So, over the last few weeks, maybe a month or so, I've been having this thought in my head, I've been seeing this sort of cooperation, like unsolicited cooperation between big companies and government. And I mean, obviously, that's something that's not new. You know, big companies are always leveraging government with lobbying and stuff like that. But now I'm actually seeing it in a way that is outside of politics. Like, companies are doing things that are political in nature, but they're not involving themselves in the politics. They're just going along with certain narratives or something like that. And one of the first things that I noticed was that kind of got me thinking about this was the amount of people that were like posting on social media about how they're getting the vaccines, but they're very young, and they're, from what I can tell, not extremely unhealthy people. And I mean, obviously, I don't know if they have any comorbidities. I can't tell that. But I mean, they're young. And now that could just be because older people don't have social media and stuff like that. So they're not posting about it and whatnot. But I just thought it was interesting that all of these younger people who are less at risk than older people were getting into lines for vaccines, and kind of, you know, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Like, if you want to get a vaccine, get a vaccine. But considering the fact that the narrative is that older people need it, based on the fact that they're more at risk, it seems strange that all these young people would be going into the lines and clogging up the works while these older people are waiting. And that was just kind of what got me thinking about it. And I was like, well, maybe they're doing that, you know, it's like social status, or like you get a little bit of social acceptance if you post it online and, you know, get the applaud of the group at large or your friends or something like that. But then
It's definitely the cool thing to do.
Yeah, it's like the in thing to do. It's like, get your vaccine card, and
like
and
when
you're
everybody
a good
was
person.
running around with their "I voted" sticker. You know,
Yes,
it's the same,
yes,
same
exactly.
Situation.
You got to post and tell everybody that you voted, and so because that was important, you needed to vote. Like, it was like a thing. Like, if we could tell something about you if you didn't vote,
right?
And if you didn't tell us that you know, same thing with the black square on Instagram. Like, if I scroll through your feed and I see that around that time last year you didn't put that black square in there, that tells me something about you, apparently. And so but then I saw this thing about Dr. Fauci, and Dr. Fauci pretty much said exactly what I was thinking in this video clip of him on, I can't remember what TV show it is, but I saw it on the internet, so.
The internet's one big TV.
Fact is, from the standpoint of practicality, there is merit to that. There are a lot of concerns and objections about discrimination for people who don't, or Big Brother looking over you and giving you the right or not to enter into a theater or into a restaurant. It's a very controversial issue right now. But you can understand that there may be individual, independent entities, not at the level of the federal government, but there may be some school districts that would say, unless you're vaccinated, you can't get in. Or some places of employment that say, unless you're vaccinated, you can't come in. That's apart from a broad umbrella concern or control by the federal government. I don't think you're going to see a federal government mandate about that.
I have a lot to say about that.
Yeah. So, and that was kind of, you know, the vaccine and the idea of like the government mandating you getting a vaccine, and having the little vaccine card to show at whatever federal buildings and stuff like that. And obviously I don't agree with that personally. You know, but I am a free market guy, so I don't necessarily think that you can also, like, I don't want the government telling private businesses that they can't do that.
Yeah.
But the fact that he just came out there and was like, yeah, you know, the federal government's not probably going to do that, but that's just because we got our buddies over at everything and everywhere that you pay for stuff, they're going to do it for us, so it's no big deal.
So what you're saying is like you're onto this idea that maybe you know, people are going to start forcing us to get the vaccine in kind of roundabout ways.
Well, I figured that would be the case. Like certain companies were going to do that anyways, in the same way that certain companies are continuing the mask mandate after the state that they're in said that you don't have to wear one. So like I figured that would be the case, but but it was more so the interplay between politics and business, but in the sense that normally it would be like, oh, well, we donate to a politician's campaign or we lobby for a thing, but now they're just kind of doing what the politicians want without being involved in the politics or the regulation at all. They're like, oh, you guys are having a hard time passing a law about vaccine mandates? Don't worry, we got you on that.
Yeah, that's true. You know, like you said, they've always been kind of working in tandem or on the hip, I would say, for sure. Big business and politics and stuff. But, you know, I've noticed that that's kind of how it goes a lot of times too. You know, you start in the sphere of social influence, right? Kind of like when we were just kind of talking before the show about the Matt Gaetz situation, right? And like anytime you're going to go after a politician in some type of investigation or something, the first hearing is in the hearing of the public opinion, like the court of public opinion, right?
Trial by media.
Right. First things first is we're going to drag you through the mud, or we're going to, you know, put certain social pressures on you to either deem you positive or negative or correct or incorrect in your scenario. So you see in that definitely with the vaccines. I think that's the step that we're in right now, you know, where I've seen a lot of it on social media. Here's my big take. What the fuck is up with Instagram? And they got to come up with a sticker for everything.
Those algorithms are working overtime, buddy.
So now if you make stories and whatnot, there's a little thing like, let's get vaccinated. I got the vaccine type, like
buy black,
right? You know, share black stories, you know, and it's like stop Asian hate, you know, and so they
zeitgeist.
Like not that I'm against these types of things, but
cultural Marxism.
But you're seeing that a lot lately, especially, and it seems to honestly be on the back of the social media companies, you know, that they wield so much power in today's society, and they're really advocating that with all types of things. COVID stickers, you know, dude, you know, if you not even say COVID, but if you just say vaccine in your story, you'll get a COVID-19 like little sticker on your shit. And I'm like, I said vaccine. I could be talking about any vaccine. Like what? Like, how could y'all key up all these different words? I didn't even write it. I just said it. And it's like you really start to see the power that these algorithms have to.
How long before you think about it because you stayed on a page too long? Okay. But this does bring me to one of my points. I've been kind of like sitting on these points for a second. I want to bring in the social media point, which is you saw a lot of people on social media that were younger boasting about getting the vaccination. And it was like, I did too, but I saw it on a different social media. And what I saw was the healthcare workers and the old people. Because I saw it on Facebook. So
okay,
I saw,
that's fair enough.
Yeah, so I think that it could just be sampling.
Yeah,
but
and I did say that it's unlikely that an old person would go get a vaccine and then post on their Instagram.
Yeah, that's what made me think about it. Yeah. That's what made me think about the differences too, because I'm assuming you saw a lot of it on Instagram. I saw a lot of it on Facebook. You know, if somebody was on Snapchat, they'd be like, all I saw was 13-year-olds getting it.
Yeah, right. Like one of the first things I saw pull up was like high schoolers. But it just depends on who's sampling the numbers. And then, like you said, this is all anecdotal too. Yeah. So it's just like, I saw this.
I saw,
But
did see some numbers the other day. I can't remember where or what the numbers were, but they said they were about 170 some million vaccinated, and they said that there was a pretty high percentage of seniors that had already gotten the vaccine, and they were starting to now trickle down to the younger folk and stuff.
Okay.
And so that's probably why we're seeing it now. It's like that very first wave was just mostly seniors and stuff, and that's why we didn't really hear much about it. But now it's starting to be the younger folk. But I definitely get what you're saying in the sense of point of like how these organizations are working in tandem.
They definitely want you to get
some type of agenda, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that agenda might be, though, it's like it's interesting. I never really knew how I felt about like my Coke having an opinion about like my lifestyle or something.
Coca-Cola, not cocaine.
Coca-Cola.
How about Coca-Cola infringing on your rights as an American that are expressed in our Constitution?
Yeah.
How about that?
But it's interesting that Coca-Cola has its own rights, and that's the weird thing is like
because corporations are people.
Are people, and it's 100% the truth. Your business, if you LLC or have a corporation or anything, it gets to stand as its own entity. It can I guess it can't vote, but it can own property. It pays its own taxes. It can get its own credit. And so
I'd argue that your business votes much more than any individual votes. Like especially if you got enough money. But
because your dollar votes.
The only vote that counts is the guy who cuts the check. That's a Jason Stapleton quote. I didn't make that up.
I wanted to also. Were you finished with your point?
Go ahead.
The Fauci thing brought me to another point too, which is this idea of like the constitutional liberties that we have as Americans being infringed by these corporations, and this idea of the vaccine passport, because if right now 20% of Americans have gotten at least the first shot, right? So we're coming along this path where maybe 1 in 4 Americans or 1 in 5 Americans may never get it, based on the what we said in our second episode about COVID, but that's a lot of people not getting it. And then if all of a sudden you can't buy groceries or do these other things, like maybe you can't come inside, but we can deliver it to you. It's like, how many rights are we willing to give up? Because what Fauci said was federal government's not going to fucking touch it.
Like they're not going to make you do it.
Yeah, because can you imagine Joe Biden trying to come in and be like, you can only go to the grocery store if you get vaccinated.
Guns.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna
Everybody gets guns.
Yeah,
like
January 6th.
Right, yeah.
So
100%.
We're coming for you, Biden.
Exactly. So I'm thinking that since Fauci was trying to set this, not maybe not intentionally, but he's trying to set this idea up that the corporations can infringe on your rights all they want, and we can't stop them.
Yeah.
How are we going to stop them?
And that's what Mac used the word. Like it seems like he's kind of grooming you.
Yeah, he's getting you ready for it. Like, hey, by the way, don't be surprised if Walmart, big bad Walmart's like, hey, you can't come in with that.
I felt like I saw this a lot before the pandemic even popped off, and some people have noted this that like. There was documentaries up on Netflix about like the next great pandemic, and like, they were talking in length and in depth about creating vaccines and stuff like months before this shit popped off. And it was weird. It was almost like you said, they were like gearing you up or like target, and it's coincidence, maybe. Also, maybe not.
Think about it like this. With the airports and terrorism, it was like, okay, like we're going to protect you from terrorism. Right. So you can't have liquids or knives or guns or anything like that in our airports anymore. And you got to come through this high security. Now it's like, we want to protect you from the flu or this like super pneumonia or this fucking AIDS cough, whatever the fuck it is. So before you come in, we're going to have to scan your chip and take a temperature check. So it's like, it's a similar pipeline they're trying to funnel us down, whether intentionally or not.
And that's what I've always seen to be the catalyst, right? It's like your rights get the Patriot Act. It's like your rights always come under siege at the guise of your own protection.
We got to keep you safe.
Like, freedom is just not very safe. You see what I'm saying? Like, for you to have all your
freedom is not very safe.
It's hard to predict. It's hard to control. If you can just kind of do whatever the fuck you want to out here, then how do we know you're gonna do the right thing?
Exactly. So we gotta massage you with some taxes and with some laws and some regulations. Take your shoes off
to keep you in kind of check. And it's very strange.
That got me.
I do want to point out though, like I personally see, like, because you made the point of like, government is not going to infringe on your rights as far as the vaccine passport, but we'll let the corporations infringe on your rights. But as Rod said, the corporations also have rights. And as a libertarian, I think that like, again, like I'm against the idea of the government mandating a vaccine passport, but I'm also against the idea of the government keeping private businesses from being able to do whatever it is that they want to do.
That's true.
Like, on the extreme, if a private business, like if you own a business and you don't want to hire black people, I don't think that the government can force you to hire black people, personally. But I think that that's a really bad look, and I would never buy any of your stuff. But I would let you go over there and do your fuck shit if you wanted to.
I got 2 points on that because this idea of like who gets the rights, you know, like who has rights. It's gonna be a common thread throughout this whole podcast because it's gonna tie in a lot to my section of it too. But so you know, stay keyed in on this idea of like who got the rights, you know, who's got the rights,
who's got more victim beans in their pocket,
right? Who's got rights to do what? But on the other caveat of that, I totally lost my other point. Damn it.
I was gonna say I forgot what you said, but I had something for it.
I was just saying that corporations also have rights.
There you go.
Yes.
Mine was that I like this though. If anybody's gonna do it, like right, like at least you can't. It's kind of like police, you know. Like if a neighbor is like, "Hey," we talked about this in the marijuana episode. If your neighbor's like, "Hey, stop smoking marijuana," you can tell your neighbor, "Hey, fuck off." You know? But if a cop comes up on you and is like, "That's marijuana I smell," you're in shit because you can't even talk back. You know what I mean? Like you can't even disagree. Yep. And so that's with the federal government. It becomes a hard restriction. Whereas if you know, Walmart starts infringing on your rights, you can just say, well, fuck out of here. I'm going to shop at Target.
I'm going to go somewhere else.
But
you get choice
this is my point that I almost lost a second ago. You said something about, I just won't shop your shit. I just won't buy your shit. And it's like, what if they're the only ones with the medicine?
Oh, what if Amazon hits you with it? And then it's like, well, where do you get shit?
Not even just that. It's like, what if it's like, you know, Walmart becomes the only distributor of medicine, like pharmacy or something, or it's just Walmart, Target, and CVS or something, and everything else can't sell pharmaceuticals anymore. They get the legislation passed, and then they say, oh, you want to come in here and buy your medicine? You got to scan your membership card.
I'd say that it's very, very rare that there aren't alternative options for you. Like, I personally don't think that you should be taking pharmaceuticals anyways. You better learn herbalism, my nigga.
Well, yeah, but that's an American's right of freedom and, you know, be able to buy whatever medicine I need. You see what I'm saying? It's an infringement upon our freedom.
No, you have a right to be healthy in any way that you can be healthy. But like if Tylenol doesn't want to sell you Tylenol, I don't think that they have to sell you Tylenol. I don't think that they have to sell you anything. You don't have a right to somebody else's services. You have a right to do that yourself if you want. Like if you really need Tylenol, you can go figure that shit out and make it yourself.
Can they refuse you service at a hospital?
Yes.
If
it were up to me, yes. If the hospital didn't want to serve you for any reason, and it's a privately owned hospital with privately owned people paying for it, then they have the right to say, no, we're not going to do that. Now, if it's a public hospital funded by taxpayer money,
like all our money,
like if you pay taxes and then you go to a tax-funded hospital and they say, no, you can't do that, then that's fucked up.
This is the who has rights
This is the who has rights. And so it's the same thing. It's like the government, I don't like the government doing that stuff because the government is the monopoly for those things. So there
it's
is
our money. It's
it's our money. Like if it wasn't for me, you couldn't be doing any of this shit anyways. So you can't bar me from that. So like if you have a private bookstore, you have the right to sell whatever books you want to sell. But at the public library, they shouldn't ban books. You should be able to get whatever book you want. White privilege, you should be able to get some racist shit. Like you should be able to get whatever kind of books you can at a public library because it's for everybody. Private bookstores aren't for everybody. They're for whatever you want to sell and whoever you want to sell it to.
So to get off the pharmacy side of it, though, like I definitely see what you're saying, though, in a sense of like those two trends seem to be kind of running parallel, right?
Yes.
Because we are seeing a mass consolidation of things. It used to be everything was very mom and pop, you know, like it was very much like Susie Sally had a store down the street and Jimbo Bob had another one down the street, and they didn't necessarily like they were competitors, you know, they weren't necessarily in lockstep or anything, and they might do things away here, but you're not really seeing that anymore. All the social media providers tend to operate in the same agenda, right?
Yes.
Facebook and Instagram, two of the largest ones, are actually the same person.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like we're seeing a mass Amazon, right? And we talked about this in our Amazon episode, is taking over the distribution of almost everything. And so you can see how those two things can start to work in parallel.
I'm hearing rumors.
You start to really run out of options, you know? Like if Amazon and Walmart and Target all decide that they want to enforce the vaccine, where are you going to go? You know, you're now down to like 80% less. And I don't know what you're going to say. It's not like you're not going to have an option. And then me and Mac talked about this earlier. Like, I mean, I'll be the first one to open up a store. You know, the minute they say, oh, you can't come into my store because you don't have the vaccine card, I just opened up the mom and pop down the street that's for the anti-vaxxers. You know what I mean? Like, come shop at my store then, because I'm not with it. I know y'all ain't with it, so I'll serve that need. But it gets just spicy. You run out a lot of options.
And
quick.
The point that John is making is that it makes it very inconvenient when these companies who have very strong holds, like I hesitate to call them monopolies because they're not truly monopolies, but they have very strong holds on the market share. So like, you're right. Like, I was going to say, like, I'm hearing rumors that Amazon's working on a deal to buy Walmart, because I know that they're taking over, shut down Walmart facilities and stuff like that. But you can see that. I mean, they already own Whole Foods, and those are all going to be, I mean, I'm sure that those are all going to be turned into those Amazon Go stores.
Right.
And so, you know, Amazon will have the Whole Foods, and then Amazon will have the Walmart. And so it'll be like a in-person brick and mortar Amazon or some shit like that. But like you said, there will be people who push back against that, and it'll be more inconvenient, but it won't be impossible. And that's the point, is like, it's not impossible to be healthy without everybody else's services. There's things that you can do on your own for no money that can make you healthier. And so the idea of like, oh, well, we're not going to sell you the medicine that you quote unquote need, that's not really the case. That's how you feel because it's convenient and you've never had it another way. But before there was somebody who made that medicine, what did you do? You went out, you found some herbs, or you did whatever you had to, or you just suffered. That'll also be an option.
It definitely sucks, though, to be marginalized as a minority, though. You see what I'm saying? Like, in whatever
It's
that minority
fun.
be, right? Like when they were in, barring black people from being able to get certain services and stuff based on the color of their skin, that was really frustrating for that group of people, right? And you could see how that would be frustrating for any group of people based on anything, because you didn't want to get a vaccine for whatever reason, or you didn't want to be this type of thing, to now be relegated to essentially like you gotta make your own lotion now. You gotta grow your own plants because you don't want to do what we want to do.
Sometimes
so you're out of here,
the public option is forced out of the market by, like, say, FedEx and UPS kind of is taking the postal service and kind of strangling it to an extent. So if we lose the public option of the postal service and we just have FedEx and the other one, what's the brown one? UPS. So if you just have FedEx and UPS, and then FedEx and UPS are like, we're not going to let you ship anything or receive anything unless you got that vaccine passport. Like, now you've taken something that is a public, what do they call that? A utility.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you've made it to, it's kind of like you say, a private corporation forcing federal law almost.
It's very Orwellian.
Yeah, it is very Orwellian.
Because that's one thing where I really start to differ from that opinion, because I'm very much in the sense too of like private organizations, private people, you get the right to do whatever the fuck you want to do. That's what America's all about. But it starts to that model starts to skew when you get into things like when we talked about with electricity. It's damn near impossible for me to it's not really, but I'm just saying, like, for me to create my own grid, you know what I mean? Or to create my own postal service, or even when we talk about healthcare, like the idea that you're going to start developing your own surgeries and your own medicines, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
my gallbladder suddenly is blocked by a giant stone.
And then not that there's not a public option, but the public option is ravaged and trashed and everything. And so to get good quality surgery, you have to go to some private hospital, but then you can't really. And it's not like, all right, well, Aunt Sally, I'll just have you do it. It's fine. It just doesn't seem to work in those modalities to me.
Well, in this culture where everything is done for us and we don't have to do anything, I understand. Like, you're right. Like, in the instance that you're talking about, you'd have to just learn how to remove your own gallbladder or some shit like that. Or you'd have to, or you'd have to physically take that package to the person you wanted to get it to. And so that's very inconvenient. But again, it's not impossible. And that's the point, is that, like, if they're literally, like, if they're if Amazon comes to you and, like, puts you in a cage and doesn't let you go anywhere, like, if UPS is like, no, you can't take that package somewhere, like, then we're talking about infringing on your rights, because UPS has the right to be like, we're not going to ship your package. But if the UPS is like, no, we're actually going to confiscate that package from you because we don't like what's in it, it's like, well, that's different. That's just theft.
Hey, that's UPS's roads. Get off those roads. It's UPS. UPS's street.
Yeah.
You better find another way across town.
But it almost begs the question of why do we
It's a tough
create
balance.
why do we create civilization at all? You know, like why do we work together in the sense of like, you know, like why did we create free market? Why did we create government? Why did we create these things? Because we knew that there is some type of you're stronger together. You
Yes.
know? Because
One
you can't,
nation.
right? You can't
Yes.
do everything by yourself. It's impossible. I don't care how proficient you are, how well learned you are, how anything. You're not going to be able to do the mail, do the electricity, do the surgery, do your own job, garden, hunt. You know, all these things. Everything that you're going to need to provide. That's why humans, since the dawn of time, have collected in tribes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and groups, because it's impossible to navigate nature by yourself.
I mean, that
you know?
primitive way of life does not sustain 8 billion people. So that's the point that you're making. Like, civilization allows us to have more and more people and do more and more things. And I'm not saying that that's not the case, but we have to strike a balance between those things. And the problem is that it's not that I'm against the idea of civilization. The problem is that people are using the power and the convenience of civilization to make people conform to what they want to do.
True.
And so that's where it's issue. It's like, okay, civilization has become such a monstrous thing, and it's so powerful that now, if you are part of civilization, you have to lockstep with what the civilization says.
It's like school of fish mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, if you're not for that, you have to take a stand. And this is like on anything. Like, you can either go with the flow and do what everybody's doing, or suffer and stand on the pedestal of pain with your principles. And so that's where you have to make the decision. Like, how much is it worth it to you? Like, in the same way when we all made the decision to put on masks, like, you and I are very similar in the fact, like, the mask thing wasn't a big deal for me, so I put on the mask. It's not a major inconvenience in my life to wear a mask when I go into a store.
Like, if this is what I gotta do to get in, then fuck it here.
Then fuck it, yeah. But injecting me with some sort of secret serum that you say is good,
that starts getting a little.
that's where I'm
bit
like,
too
no,
much
I'm
for
gonna
me.
suffer on my own fucking principles on that one. If I can't go to Walmart, then Walmart's just gonna have to deal without my money then. Yeah.
This is funny. You're talking about civilization, and my mind immediately jumped to the Ted Kaczynski energy of like, yes, civilization forces you to do all this shit. It forces you to have transportation. It forces you to get vaccinated as a child for whatever diseases they vaccinate you for while you're a crying baby. It forces all these other cultural and societal norms on you that are civilized.
Chop your dick skin off.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that one, but I thought it was a little controversial. But like,
That's why we're here, baby.
there's so much that civilization forces you to do. It forces you to shave. It forces you to clean yourself.
Have clothes.
Like, you know, like the other day I was like in the shower and I was like, yeah, some people just don't even soap them. And I was like, wait a second.
Where did I get the idea?
Where did I get the idea to soap myself?
Yeah.
Should I just be rubbing dirt all over my skin so I don't burn in the sunshine? And then but evolution hasn't caught up to civilization. I think is kind of where my brain keeps landing on this point.
It's very true.
Which is why like it hurts to sit in a car and drive for 5 hours.
Right.
My body has not.
It's not designed to do
It's
that.
not designed yet. But if I'm a trucker and my family are truckers and we truck for 10,000 years over the course of 47 generations, how many of my great grandchildren
be
will
walking
just be
like
like,
that.
"Hey, Grandpa."
Well, don't worry about that. We're getting rid of truckers with robots, so you don't have to worry about that.
Walking in chair position.
Yes. We end up looking like snowshoe crabs.
We're gonna be those people from Wall-E where like your bones get smaller, your
100%
fat gets
Wall-E.
bigger.
So the point I wanted to make about the civilization thing is
Or
like,
the Matrix.
it forces you into all these little boxes already. And I don't want it to force me into another vaccination, but I feel like my kids or my kids' kids are probably going to be vaccinated
at birth. They're gonna get the
for this
COVID
kind of
vaccine.
stuff.
at
Yeah, I
birth.
think they
It'll
are.
come right
And
after.
that to me is just like, well, if I can see that future, then how scary is it for me to vaccinate myself? And I'm not really sold yet. I feel like I might not get vaccinated, but there's an opportunity to get it where it would help me get to a concert or get to another country or do this thing I want to do. Then I might just fucking be like, yo, stick 'em, boy. I know like 40 people in real life who have already gotten it.
Yeah.
None of them are dead.
Well, it's true because, you know, like, I mean, I've already done it. You know what I mean? Like, I've already succumbed to so many things that
Smallpox,
I didn't want
anthrax.
to do.
Yeah.
Just even out of the side of the world to vaccinate, like clothes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hate wearing a shirt I fucking hate wearing a shirt. I wish that, I talk about this all the time. I wish I could just walk around no shirt every single place, no shoes, no shirt, no service. I mean, I succumbed to that a long time ago, you know, where I'm like, fuck, we might as well go ahead and strap these things on my shoe thing so I can get in here and do what I got to do.
What I got to do.
You know, and this sucks that they know that. And so that, you know, that's the thing that I think we're trying to get at this conversation too, is in the end, you're probably going to get it. You know what I mean? You're probably going to get it just because it's so hard to go against the grain. You know, at some point it becomes so massively inconvenient to not be a part of the group, like social pressure, or what is it called when the need to fit in or need to be into society,
social acceptance, and because that's the thing, is it's not just a physical thing, like, oh, I need this XYZ product, and so this is the store I have to get into to get it, but literally, it's a psychological thing too, because everybody else is looking at you like, who's this guy without shirt and shoes on?
Exactly.
Who's this guy? Like, you can't come in here without that stuff on. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden I'm the wrong person.
Yeah.
And Jordan Peterson talks about this. He's like, yo, look, if he uses it in the term of like a Twitter mob, but in the sense that, and he harkens it back to the days of like real mobs. Like if a mob of 100 people shows up at your doorstep, the first thing that you should think is, what did I do that was wrong?
Right.
That's, you know, it shouldn't be like to dig your heels in and be like, fuck you people, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, no, 100 people, like, I might have done something wrong.
It's hard to piss off that many people.
I did something, you know, maybe I should. Now, after you assess that and you determine, oh, actually, I didn't do anything wrong, these people are overreacting, then you can make your stand. But the first thing you should do when that happens is, what am I doing that's wrong? And because, like you said, John, we are designed to, or I think it was actually you, Rod, we are designed to stay together. And like, we work better in groups, in civilization and stuff like that. We proliferate, we become more prosperous through those methods. So the idea of bucking all of that is to like buck the achievements of human society, basically. Yeah. And so it's tough.
It's how
tough.
we came down from the trees. We had to all learn to throw rocks together to defeat the cheetahs. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's a real shit. Like, we figured out how to pick up a rock and throw it and all be like, yo, all of us aim at that hippo.
Yeah. I think the problem, though, that I run into most with this whole situation is lack of trust for the people that are leading this group. You see what I'm saying? You know, the same thing that we're talking about right now that offers protection is the same thing that leads herds of buffalo to run off a cliff. Right. Or for Nazis to rise to power. Right. You know, like that's the thing that sucks, is what is the socially acceptable thing changes so fluently. Like, it's like there was a time where it was totally cool to just own another human being and to like have them locked up in a cage somewhere and you just like get your ass back to work.
And do whatever you want to.
And it was so socially acceptable that the person who wrote the words "all men are created equal" owned slaves.
Didn't even think that was like a part of the thing, you know, like to have
so compartmentalized.
To have this extreme detachment from it. And so the same thing, like when you, how do we, if we don't have these conversations, if individuals don't stand up and ask, you know, and not just us, but like everybody to say like, are we going the right way, though?
Is this
like,
what we should be doing?
Honestly, the thing, instead of just blindly being like, I got it. I did the thing that everybody wanted me to do.
I did it.
Yeah. Like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
cool.
the other
All
thing
right,
is that, like, you bring up,
you
you know, Nazis and stuff and, you know, the buffalo, like, I found out that it was a policy that people, like the American people, didn't just hunt the buffalo to death because they were eating them all. They were literally trying to exterminate the only food source that the Native Americans had. The Native Americans didn't eat anything else basically other than buffalo. And so they were like, if we kill all these buffalo, we can probably get rid of these Indians. And like, that's fucked up. That's super fucked up.
And that's what would lead them to. Well, actually, I heard the Native Americans would do this too to hunt the buffalo. They would lead them off the cliff sometimes too.
They would do that too, but I mean, they can't. They wouldn't kill all of the things all at once. Is the point? It's like they're doing that in a sense of, you can imagine that being, for whatever reason, like more sustainably, they wouldn't kill all the buffalo if all they eat is buffalo. But for people who don't like those people, they're like, hey, you know, I noticed that they don't really eat anything other than buffalo. We could probably just get rid of that. And so that's where it gets interesting. And we're already seeing it. If you go to this article here with the Krispy Kreme, I saw this post online, and it was Krispy Kreme advertising how they were going to give, you know, people who could show their vaccine card a free donut. And I was like, oh, brilliant. Not only are you incentivizing people to go along with the flow, to, you know, do the thing that everybody wants them to do, but you're going to, in return for that, you're going to give them something that actually increases their risk of dying from the thing that they're supposed to be protecting themselves from.
Absolutely.
And so
you
it's
didn't
like,
give them a carrot.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly. Like, we're not really giving you a carrot. It's actually a high inflammatory sugar bomb that you can have. And that's going to be your reward for being healthy, quote unquote. Yeah. Then, as I do more research, turns out it's not a one-time deal. You can go to Krispy Kreme, the same location, every single fucking day, and they will give you a free donut if you have a vaccine. Just one shot. If you need 2 shots, like, you don't need both shots if it's a 2-shotter. I know the Moderna and the Pfizer ones are 2 shots, and the Johnson & Johnson is 1 shot. But yeah, a vaccine sticker is not valid. You got to have the actual card. And I've seen people, like, they've already gotten them laminated so that they don't, die in the rain or whatever. But, like, the idea, like, oh, no, not just 1 free donut. You can get 365 free donuts. You get one every single fucking day. Just come on in. Come on in.
Sounds like the plot to Super Size Me.
Yeah, and it was like, I wonder how much money Krispy Kreme's getting from Big Pharma for this. You know, like, the idea, like, the more people become unhealthy, the more money Big Pharma makes. So I could see some weird backroom dealing where, like, the CEOs of, like, McDonald's and Krispy Kreme get together and be like, hey, what if we give away free shitty food to all these people if they get vaccines? And then on the back end, Big Pharma's like, yeah, we like that idea.
How about this? How about this one? Pepsi and fucking Halo being like, hey,
Mountain Dew.
Your game is going really well. Do you want all the kids to drink soda and get fat?
Yeah.
And then they're like, yo, call in Pfizer. Hey, Pfizer.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can get some. I'm sure we can get a kickback for this.
I would not
wild,
be surprised
dude.
to find out somebody's paying for this to go down. I mean, like you said, like AEG doesn't end up on your jersey for free just because they were like, oh, we want to be. There could be something, and pharma
companies don't just eat the cost of these promotions.
Genius to not pick something, like you said, pick something that works for them 2 times.
Exactly.
But it sounds so good on the surface. It's like, look at this free charitable donut shop helping out. It's like,
this is the
thing. What's happening.
This is the thing that makes me sketch about it, though, and this is what I feel like our whole podcast is aimed at. Right? It's not like I don't want any viewer to take our opinions as like their reasoning for doing what they're doing. Right? Like that's the silly thing to me. It's this persuasion, it's this like trying to get you to do the thing that they want you to do, right? Why is it not that it's zeitgeist like we talked about earlier? Instead of just saying, these are the facts, this is what's happening, this is what's not happening, like you get the vaccine or don't get the vaccine, whatever, but like the choice is yours type shit. It's not that. It's the grooming and the persuading
the
and the advertising and and the pushing you towards whatever they deem to be the right thing and wrong thing. I think is the weird thing to me.
Yep.
Yeah. They decide.
Yeah.
And you are simply allowed to obey.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you don't, then get the fuck out.
They want to make it really hard for you.
And so
put the muscle on you.
It started with the vaccine thing, and I was like, wow, this is so strange. They seem to be doing the things that the politics wants them to do without actually having to get involved with the political system at all. But then I heard that the MLB was going to boycott the state of Georgia by moving the All-Star game from there because of the Senate Bill 202 that just passed in Georgia, which is a voter rights law that has stipulations for who can and can't vote and how you go about voting and things like that. And I was like, whew, once again, private big businesses coming in and being like, hey, don't worry, we're not gonna, if you don't like what they're doing politically in Georgia, we're just not gonna give them baseball. Like, we're just gonna keep baseball out of that. Same way that the
NBA did
with North Carolina, with the bathroom bill, where they were like, "Look, transgender bathrooms aren't happening in North Carolina." And then the NBA was like, "All right, well then we're not playing NBA games in North Carolina."
That was a fascinating story too, because Charlotte was the one that, like, as a municipality, as a city, was like, it's okay, and then North Carolina was like, what the fuck did Charlotte say? No. We don't fuck with trans people in North Carolina. Shut that shit down. Right. And so then they made this whole thing that cities can't supersede what the state wants to do.
Yeah,
and so there was a big power struggle there. It's a very interesting story.
Yes, it is. And so I was like, wow, like, that's crazy. Like, and it pulled me down this rabbit hole of this bill. And like, what is this bill? Like, I've heard it called, I mean, Joe Biden, literally the president of the United States, said it's Jim Crow on steroids on national television. And I was like, Jim Crow on steroids?
That doesn't sound hyperbolic at all.
I was like, yeah, that's crazy. Because, you know, Jim Crow was pretty intense. You know, you literally couldn't drink out of a water fountain under Jim Crow. So I looked into it.
On steroids.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that statement. You know, there are some things like it makes some restrictions on things like voter ID, and it opens other things up. And actually, if you go to the second clip, well, actually, you can just play the rest of the clips in this video. Yeah.
This legislation is unacceptable. It is a step backwards, and it does not promote principles we have stood for in Georgia around broad access to voting, around voter convenience, about ensuring election integrity. And this is frankly just a step backwards. We've spent many decades promoting within Georgia a better society and a better environment for business, and this is a step backwards.
What do you think about the possibility that baseball decides to move their All-Star game out of Atlanta because of this political issue?
I think today's professional athletes are acting incredibly responsibly. I would strongly support them doing that. People look to them. They're leaders. Look at what's happened with the NBA as well. This is Jim Crow on steroids, what they're doing in Georgia and 40 other states.
What Joe Biden needs to do is look at the side-by-side of Georgia and Delaware. You know, he's focused on trying to get Major League Baseball to pull the game out of Georgia, which is ridiculous. If you look at these comparisons, the state of Delaware has no in-person early voting. We have 17 days. In Georgia, you don't have to have an excuse to get an absentee ballot by mail. In Delaware, you do. We have drop boxes. Delaware does not. And if you want to get a bottle of water while you're standing in line in Georgia, you can absolutely do that. The elections officials can help you with that.
So just to go through, those clips first was the Coca-Cola CEO. Coca-Cola is a company that's based out of Georgia. And he came out and he was saying like, oh, we don't agree with this. Delta, also a company that's based in Georgia. They said the same thing. Coincidentally, though, they didn't say anything about the bill in the months that it was being debated in the House and the Senate before passing. They refused to take a stance on it. It was only a few weeks after that it was passed before they actually said anything about it. Now, I don't want to put words in their mouth or intentions in their brains, but it seems like they waited to see what everybody was going to think about this and then was like, oh, we all think this is bad? Yeah, we all think this is bad? Okay, yeah, no, this is bad. This is bad. We don't like this.
Wait, what does Twitter say?
Yeah, Twitter said this is bad.
Twitter said it's bad?
Okay.
Okay, it's bad.
Yeah. My assistant's telling me that Twitter said that this is bad, so I'm going to go ahead, roll that camera. I'm going to tell them that this is bad.
Line up 140 characters. We got to get in front of this.
And I just... As an aside, I want to point out the CEO of Coca-Cola said one of the most ridiculous statements I had ever heard in my life in that little clip. He said that for decades, Coca-Cola has been trying to promote a better society while simultaneously selling one of the worst drinks you could possibly have for your health. It is ridiculous to say that. It is ridiculous to say that your company has been promoting a better society while you constantly are selling them nothing but trash.
Not to mention the misinformation about polar bears. They will murder you. They won't just they won't just drink soda with you.
God, John, I love your perspectives on this podcast. I didn't even think about the polar bears. Yeah, so, and then after that was Joe Biden, and that was the part where he was talking about how it's Jim Crow on steroids and all this jazz. And then at the end, that was actually Georgia's governor. I can't remember his name, Representative Kennedy or something like that. But he was making a comparison between Delaware, which is a very blue state, and it's actually Joe Biden's home state. And he was saying like, oh, yeah, it just so happens that Georgia has more open voting policies after this bill than Delaware does. Still. Yeah. And, one of the interesting things that I found out about the MLB moving their game from Atlanta, they were trying to figure out what cities do we go to. And I heard that New York was a big idea. They were like, oh, and the worst part about this is that the whole idea of having the game in Atlanta was supposed to be celebrating Hank Aaron, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, who was from Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah. And so now that's not going to happen. They might still celebrate Hank Aaron, but they're going to do it in Denver, Colorado.
I was going to say, where, in Minneapolis?
Yeah, so they're going to do it in Denver, Colorado. They decided not to go with New York for whatever reason, but it might just be because New York actually has more restrictive voting laws than Georgia does.
It does.
But I did an interesting comparison. I was like, you know what? I want to see the demographic comparison between Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, and Denver, Colorado. I was just curious. So just to see at the people who would be impacted by this decision. Yeah. So if you go up to the 2021 comparison, so if you go down to people at the left, on the left side, nope, people. There you go. If you go down to people, and you can scroll down to where it has them, not by population. Keep going down. It's a little bit lower. This is all age. A little bit lower. So that's it right there. So if you look at this, Atlanta, Georgia has a 37.3% white population, and it has a 51.8% black population. Now, Denver, Colorado has a 53.6 white population and a 9.2% black population. And so, it can just be said that in this time of a global pandemic, when people have lost their jobs, they're on economic hard times, the underprivileged black people of Atlanta, Georgia really could have used this MLB All-Star game to generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for their economy. And MLB was like, nah, I think we're going to take it to predominantly white Denver, Colorado. Now, I'm not saying that they did it on purpose, but that's just, factually, the black people in Atlanta, Georgia will be harmed by this. They will be harmed by the fact that now it's not like Georgia's going to reverse their voting law because MLB did this. So according to certain people, they will have less opportunities to vote, and they will have less opportunities to make money. And I was like, man, this is a perfect example of how when people want to quote unquote help, and then they do something in the guise of helping, it actually hurts those very people that they were supposed to be helping.
You think they were trying to protect black people by moving it, though?
That was the whole point. The whole point about boycotting this bill and how bad this bill was that it was voter suppression specifically targeted towards black people, which is why they keep calling it Jim Crow.
I totally get your point, which is that by them posturing and saying you better change these voter suppression laws or we're not going to, support your city with, these big things that are tourist attractions and money generators. So they're trying to it's literally like sanctions.
Yep.
Private corporations are trying to sanction Atlanta, Georgia, which will hurt the black people in Atlanta because there's a majority
It'll hurt
black
everybody
people
in Atlanta, but there just so happens to be quite a few black people there. It's a majority black city.
Yeah, that's a definitely a fair point.
Yeah.
Maybe it's misguided. I mean, obviously, it looks misguided because they're trying to solve a problem of saying we don't think that this bill is good for the black voters of Georgia. That's the stance they're taking.
We're trying to help black people
by hurting black people,
by taking money out of their pockets.
Yes. So I definitely see what you're saying there, but like I said, misguided. Like what?
Yeah, I'm not saying that the MLB was doing anything nefarious here. I don't think that they were maliciously being like, "Ooh, this is a good opportunity to screw those black people in Atlanta," because otherwise they wouldn't have, they was just not scheduled it to be there in the first place. But this is just what happens when you follow the political winds, when you posture as a big company, you think like, "Oh, we're taking this righteous stand against something." And then you don't ever look at the ramifications.
Well, I would just say in this specific instance, taking the race out of it in general, because what they were saying was that they were not really against, they were talking about we are for ease of access for voters, right? They didn't necessarily say like we're trying to protect our black voters or we're doing this to, posture anyway towards, the race of it. They were just trying to say that, they wanted to keep voting easy and widely accessible, right? And so, like you said, I think by them moving to Denver, I just don't think that race was on their mind at all, and that's why he's saying maybe it's a little misguided. But I definitely see what you mean in the sense of your consequence still ends up kind of like a double penalty towards this minority.
Yeah, I don't think race was in it at all for MLB. I think looking good on TV land is what was in the minds of MLB. I
saw this in a Bill Maher clip where he had his little panel and he was talking to one guy and like another lady. And the guy was talking about how this voter suppression law or whatever they're called, this voting law, like didn't really hurt people. And then the lady was like some voting expert and she was like saying how bad it was and it was a back and forth. But one of the things that Bill Maher said was that it's like, it's not targeted. It's a shotgun blast that targets. So it's like, it's just going to hit all these people in this group. And in that group is a lot of black people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily saying like, let's get these black voters. It's saying, let's get these voters who don't have IDs or access to a car or whatever things that just happen to affect a lot of the African-American population that are poor.
Yeah.
So in an effort to kind of get some, I also wanted to point out with Coca-Cola though, real quickly, Coca-Cola, this upstanding company that's only worried about the greater society and the benefits of Atlanta, Georgia, and
poisoning our children
and all of the United States. They were actually involved in lobbying against a bill that would ban companies from importing goods made by forced labor by Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, China. And I did some research, and the reason for that is because Coca-Cola imports a lot of their sugar for their soda production from Xinjiang, China. And they like that forced Uyghur Muslim labor because it's cheap and it makes the sugar cheap.
They lobbied against it.
They lobbied against it. So there was a bill that would say U.S. companies cannot import goods from forced labor in these regions of China. And Coca-Cola's government policy division, they have a whole division of their company that is solely tied to trying to lobby the government, basically. They lobbied against that bill. They were like, no, we like importing goods from forced labor camps in Xinjiang, China. Our bottom line depends on it.
Yeah, but for decades,
I did some research. I dug a little bit deeper into that one. If you go up to that Biden niece, turns out President Joe Biden's niece worked for Coca-Cola right up until November when he was elected in this very division of Coca-Cola. The one that was directly linked with the political ties and how their company is involved in political issues. Now, it is said that she did not personally lobby for this bill, but she was in a very high up executive position of this division of Coca-Cola. So you can imagine that she knew what was going on with it. It's not like she didn't know. And if she didn't, then she should have been fired years ago.
This says the spokeswoman also told Fox News the Coca-Cola company does not import any goods from the Xinjiang region into the U.S.
Yeah, like I said, it's hard to say because I've seen lots of other things that actually show manifests. So it's like, it's tough to say.
But we know this to be true. Well, I mean, in other realms, like, dude, if you watch Rotten, like, Rotten's is full of like the shit with the garlic manufacturers and stuff. They're doing the same shit.
They're probably just bringing it to other regions of the world instead of the U.S. That's why they can say that.
Because, like, if you say we don't import any goods from Xinjiang region
into the U.S.,
you could ship it from Xinjiang to somewhere else,
Australia,
and then back to the U.S.
So literally anywhere else in the world, and just be like, oh, but we don't bring it into the U.S.
Yeah.
Specifically from there.
Yeah, because it's not like Coke manufactures their soda in the U.S. majoritively. I don't think that would be the case either. I don't know about that.
They bottle a lot of it here.
I would like to take
but it's not made here.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. I would like to take a broader stance on this too. Back to the issue, like what I think we're seeing is a shift in power, right? And I think we've been seeing this for a long time. We were just making jokes about how your dollar is the greatest voter, right? And everything. And honestly, what we're seeing is a shift from political power to economic power, right? You know, where money rules all, and in the sense of, you think back to like, not that there were certain organizations and companies that wielded this type of power, you know, like maybe like U.S. Steel or something in the early 1900s. Like there was a couple of mega conglomerate like corporations, but now we see that there's so many of them. There's Google, Coca-Cola, like these things are multi-billion-dollar organizations. Some of these corporations probably outnumber not the revenue of the country, but like other small countries, like we have corporations that make more money than certain countries do.
Yeah.
And they're starting to, like you said, no longer where it was back in the day, they kind of had to influence the politicians in order to see what they wanted to see come about. They're starting to realize, well, we just have the influence to really just force whatever we want to see come to be just through our own economic means or through our own influential means and stuff like that. I just think we're seeing this. We've been seeing it a lot over the last couple of decades of a weakening of political power and a strengthening of social or economic power.
Yeah, you
know?
hit the social point. They can make a cultural shift
right
with their products and with their
Yep. And that's all been built kind of, I think, through that zeitgeist, you know, through years of commercials and through years of tying because people don't identify as much with their political viewpoints as they used to. We were talking about this a little bit in the sense of like, I don't know how many people are proud Democrats or Republicans and stuff, you know, like when I look at millennials, like they might go a certain way or have their opinions and stuff, but you're not like, you know, repping that. But dude, you rep your shit. Like
you rep your brands.
Your brands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm a BMW dude, you know, like
get that shit tattooed on you.
I
I
see
see very few people with the Democratic or Republican animals tattooed on them.
You know what I'm saying? Like I don't see people collecting Republican figurines all around
I've seen
their
the
house
hammer and
stuff.
sickle.
Yeah.
Now that I have seen.
Yeah, I've
certain
seen
political policies and movements.
But then I would even think that they take that more towards I guess, you know, that's a political movement. But my point is, you know, brands have spent decades tying themselves to you emotionally.
Yes.
And then now they're starting to reap the benefits of that power.
That good old tasty Bernays sauce.
Yeah, you made me think about this too, about how these corporations are essentially like voting blocks. Like they have political power, kind of like the evangelical Christian vote, which is another thing that you're a little brand loyal to. You get that. You wear that logo.
Oh,
You tap that on your body. You rep the hell out of that.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so they're coming little cults and stuff. But it's going to be interesting, man, because, you know, more and more, you know, like Fauci's like trying to say like, hey, it's not us. But he's kind of right. It's not us you got to worry about anymore. Like, you know, your government is losing power by the day, you know, but these large corporations are getting stronger by the day. You know, you bringing up the idea of Amazon or somebody about Amazon potentially buying out Walmart and stuff like these
This
things.
is just rumors in internet forums. I don't have any
That's how it
The
proof about
United
that.
States of Google. I mean, this shit's not out of the question,
you know what
man.
I mean? Right, dude. You know, it's them that the government doesn't spy on you anymore. It's Google that spies on you and then gives the information to the government, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so it's the corporations that are really starting to get a lot sketched out about, because I saw this a lot too. People were talking about, it's kind of segue into my point in a minute, but you know, it's less about the real battle seems to be between the 99 and the 1%. You know what I mean? Like that's the 1%ers tend to be these people who are really kind of running the show out here.
I feel like that's how it's always been. Like, especially like if you go to like Britain, for instance, in England, it's always been about class. It's very recently that it's now been about, you know, race or culture, because for a long time, like the American melting pot is a very interesting experiment that the rest of the world is just now coming into doing. You know, it was like Sweden during the refugee crisis and stuff. Like these European countries didn't have large minority populations, but in the US we've had this mixing of totally different cultures and people for a very long time. And I think that because of that, we have this like idea that it's about race or it's about culture, whereas in England and all these other places, it's always been about class. It's just that it just so happens that here in America, certain minorities fall into those classes much more than other minorities. And so we're like, oh, it's white against black.
Right.
But it's actually the only reason that you would be saying that is because the white people are in power. And it's not like black people who are rich don't have power. It's just that there are fewer rich black people. And so that's the thing. And so it clouds, I think it clouds our judgment. I think it's always been about class.
Yeah,
like that was one thing that Karl Marx got it on the head.
Yeah.
It's about class.
Well, his was his was labor versus capital.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Which
just
is
class.
class.
That's his.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the capital is the people who own the
working class
businesses.
versus the
They're
owner.
the ones that own all the capital, which is the money. And then the lower class is the laborers, the people who work for these corporations. So it's just different labels, but it's just classes.
In monarchies and stuff, right? Like what makes you king? You own the land, right? Like the all the land or like the place that everybody lives, you're the owner of that. And if you're a serf, a working class or something, you work the land, you farm it, or you cultivate it in some way you make. So, but yeah, class dudes for sure. So For my little section and thing, I was watching this. It just kind of came up in my sphere. You know, I've actually been getting really interesting recommendations for my YouTube lately. You know, like I guess maybe because I've been kind of all over the place with the things that I've been looking at. And
it's
stuff.
The research.
Yeah,
it's been doing it to me too.
Right, that's
it's the research.
It's the research, right? So now I get hit with all these interesting like topics and news clippings and stuff. So this came up on my thing and I watched it and then I was just like, wait a minute, this is just weird to me. You know, it's just weird to me. I see on the surface, it's kind of like a lot of the topics that we talk about. Like there's a root problem, but then it's like that problem gets extrapolated into all these other things. It's kind of like when you're trying to have any type of conversation with somebody, you know, and then they start, what is that called when you start doing that? When you start
a straw man?
Yeah, that's kind of that.
Gaslighting?
But, gaslighting is a big one too. But yeah, where you just start extrapolating the conversation, arguing semantics, right? It's like that, where you just start picking something and it just ends up, next thing you know, you're in way left field talking about something that has nothing to do with the actual like topic or problem that you're trying to discuss. And so I feel like I've seen that a lot lately. And I feel like this is kind of a good example of this. This video is about, it's an ABC News report and it's about what happened to Papa John's. Now I missed the whole initial story. This is years later after this whole thing went down. But I guess supposedly Papa John's, the guy who was the face of Papa John's and you know, you've seen him in all the Super Bowl commercials and
better ingredients, better pizza,
Papa John's. That dude. Well, he ain't in that shit no more. He's been ousted from the whole Papa John's.
He was also the founder and the CEO of that company. He started Papa John's.
And his dad's restaurant's broom closet.
Yeah, very interesting story.
There's no photo like with Amazon, but, you know, Pixar didn't happen.
Yeah, right. That's why I've been trying to document my whole process. But anyways, so he get ousted by you. Your chair will do that to you. You know what I mean? Your stockholders can really be like, we ain't fucking with you no more. You're out of here, buddy.
Especially once you go public, right?
Right, exactly. Like once, because then you have to establish a chair and a founding, like a chair, right? And so it's a bunch of different chairmen, board members, and then they can vote against you. Happened to Steve Jobs too, right? You know, so anyway,
Apple was plummeting, and they were like, "Steve Jobs, please come
back.
We're
sorry, we didn't mean it. Yeah, that's
bring your awesome animated movies."
Yeah. So this dude's been trying to fight to get back and stuff. Well, now recently there was a tape that came out, kind of honoring him, I guess, or exonerating him, because what happened was he hired this marketing company to like help his brand image and stuff like that. But then they were like kind of weirdly going against him, like kind of wishing ill upon him. Kind of wonder like why, like, you know, I mean, if you're paying these people, but then they decide you're a douche and kind of hope you get what you deserve, it almost makes it seem like, are you a douche? You know,
little backroom deal.
Also, his image was already starting to be tarnished by the time he had to call these people in. I remember a video of him drunk with some fans at like a game and just being sloppy. I think he had some sort of like racist or sexual harassment thing already kind of hurled at him. So he he might have been.
Yeah, nobody hires a PR, a public relations firm if their PR is good.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
so I'm not gonna. This isn't gonna be a conversation of standing up for the Papa John's guy. But, I mean, whatever. But when I did hear this whole tape and the conversation and what actually happened, I started really wondering, like, is this actually racism? You know? Because this is what happened. He gets accused of being a racist because he says the N-word on a phone call.
He dropped a hard R on a phone call.
Yeah, exactly. And but context, man. Context, I feel like, is everything. And so that's kind of the conversation I wanted to have today with you boys. And since it's like, what is actually racism? You know, like what constitutes as being actually racist towards a group of individual or people or whatever. And so let's hear what he says and kind of how they talk about this incident. And I see what you guys think about it.
In retrospect, what do you think about your use of the actual word?
Well, I said the word, I didn't use the word. I cited the word, I mentioned the word. I paraphrased what another founder used to say or did that I would never say. Have I over again what I wish I'd have said, the N-word? Of course, of course.
So why didn't you?
The context was used as a contrast. I never used the word. This guy uses the word. I never used that word. It was to make a point.
Do you think that it's possible to not have racist intent but still have racist impact?
I think if you use a racial slur, you have ill intent. I think if you cite the word as an example, don't use that word, I don't think that's ill intent. I think that is anti-racist, absolutely.
Would you agree that the N-word, the real word, is arguably the weightiest word in the English language? And I'm wondering if you felt that only in the aftermath, or if at the time when you said it, you knew the power of actually stating the N-word, because if you had just said the N-word, we probably wouldn't even be talking about this right now.
Right. I think the reason I was using it in the context and the reference I was is because I despise the word. Don't use that word. I never use the word. If I had over it again, would I not use the word? Absolutely.
Do you think that you exercised good leadership by using the actual word?
If I had it over again, I would use the N-word instead of saying Colonel Sanders actually calls black people the word. I definitely would use the N-word, not the word.
This conversation to me, the first time I watched it, didn't hit as hard as it hit this time.
Oh my
God! It is
God.
Full blown clown world. Not that all this shit happened and that he, because like you asked the question, was it racist? Like,
right.
I think that it was insensitive, but I'm not sure that Papa John's had racist intent. But the fact that there is an ABC News primetime sit down where she's like, do you understand that when you said the N-word, to be clear here, not the N-word, but the N-word itself, do you think that was good leadership? Like,
saying the actual word?
It's insanity that they are breaking this down in such minutia on primetime television.
Yeah.
It blows
and just
me
for
away.
context, he's on a recorded phone call with some people, and I think the PR people were also on this call, and he was referencing that the Colonel Sanders of Kentucky Fried Chicken calls black people mer.
And yes, he said Colonel Sanders calls black people mer.
Yeah, and so the whole discussion there is whether or not in that sentence he should have said Colonel Sanders calls black people the N-word instead of saying Colonel Sanders calls black people mer.
Yes, that's why we're on prime time talking to the founder of the actual company who was ousted. And it's like, I don't know what the right punishment is for Papa John. I don't. I know he's a weird guy. I know he said racist shit before. Maybe he's just a big, dumb, alcoholic, insensitive asshole. But should he be able to do his own commercials? That's up to his company, right?
I would argue that right here on national TV, they just said the N-word like 15,000 times. That to me was the most I could not wrap my head around that. She literally said, we probably wouldn't be sitting here if you had just said the N-word. But instead, you said the actual word. I almost can't even have this conversation because
are we all adults here?
What are you talking
the
about?
The sounds that came out of your mouth could have been different.
What are you talking about?
They could have been different sounds.
Like referencing the word, saying the word in reference, but not actually saying it.
Yeah, he had to make a whole distinction. He was like, I didn't use the word.
I just said
I said the word.
And
now there's a difference between those two. It's like, oh my God.
I couldn't help but think, like, are we all 6 years old? Is that just what's going on? Like, you were just like, don't say the F word, little Johnny. It's like, it's like, is it okay for your kid to be like, man, F word that, man? This is fucking BS. This is effing BS.
How long before they start telling me cooties are real? I mean, like how far back are we going to regress here?
Oh, well, I will let you know that they actually have a cooties vaccine out right now.
You get your cooties vaccine passport if you want to go to the restaurant.
Look, and I got to make a distinction. Like, look, I really, this is going to be a hard conversation to have because it is clownery to me and so I'm going to do a lot of laughing, but I understand that there is a lot of pain that's associated with this. I understand that it's hard for some of these symbols and these words and these things to exist and what they were used for and that and this and that. But the idea of that word is somehow softened by saying the N-word, like that it's now okay as long as you don't actually say it.
It's like Voldemort.
But, but you reference it in some type of meh, It's cool.
Yeah, don't say Beetlejuice 3 times.
Hey, don't say red rum. You know, it's like,
it's
what
Candyman. This is Candyman. That's what this is. This is Bloody Mary.
I could not.
I wonder if somebody would get in trouble if they were like, these N-words need to get off my block. Right?
Whoa, it felt very weighty.
But
That felt weighty to me.
It would be okay in the sense that that's what she was saying. It's like, if you're gonna reference it, then you need to not say it, but you can like reference around it or dance. And I just think it's so funny when I look at my kid. This happens to me in real life. My kid, her and her friend have come up with all these synonymous words with cuss words, right? So that they can say this, so they can cuss, but they're not like cussing.
Coded language.
Right, exactly. So I don't know what their little code words are. I've just caught them a couple of times.
It's
I'm
probably
like,
really
What's
funny.
that? Oh, they're hilarious, right? And so I'm just like, I tell her, I said, look, I know what you're doing. Like, I know what you're doing. I know what you're saying. It's
not clever.
Right? You know, you're not smart. You're not.
I'm 30 years old.
You know what I mean? Like, you're cursing. Stop it. Stop doing it. Okay. Like, you know, even I was almost even more pissed. I was like, if you're gonna do it, then just fucking do it.
Just do it.
Right? But don't say
be a man about it.
Just F-wording
Say it
do
with
it.
your chest.
You just F-wording do it.
And then she goes, well, no, Dad, it's just so I don't get in trouble. And, you know, and I said, what? That's pretty slick. You know, I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty slick so that she can cuss up a storm in class and the teacher's not gonna catch wind of it because she's not saying the word. But that's what I'm saying.
I
like,
can see that case going to the
context-
Supreme Court.
You know what I mean?
Your Honor, let the record show that I did not actually say what the teacher is accusing me
I
of
see
saying.
I see the prosecutor being like, ma'am, on the 7th of November, 2021, did you state in third period around 10:48 a.m. these mother truckers? It's fucking craziness.
Right? And it's so strange to me how, you know, I get if you want to fight racism, and I think we should, you know, if we're going to go after that problem, we can't be gaslighting or taking it and exacerbating it into these semantics over the language, over, you know, like intent and context have got to start coming into play in these conversations because we see so much of this now in cancel culture where it's not about how somebody's going about it or if they mean bad or, you know, when people make honest to God mistakes and they say things out of stupidity or out of the, you know, we immediately assign malintent to everything that somebody does in any type of context. And to me, it's very strange. Like I said, listen to that conversation of just their 800 time reference of the word, like literally doing the same thing that he was doing in this conversation. They're now doing it in live television, but it's all good because we're not saying it, you know what I mean?
We're saying the code word.
Yeah, it's saying the roundabout.
Just
right?
like your dog.
We're referencing it in the appropriate way.
Yes.
Right? And it's such this weird policing of language that it almost, we can't even have a real conversation anymore because it's like, well, you know, you gotta, I have more, you know, this is another type of same scenario. We'll have to kind of watch this whole clip, but, you know, we'll probably clip it for you guys in the edit here. But this is a social experiment. You ever seen that show, What Would You Do? Oh, wow.
I just immediately think about the Nickelodeon show, the what would you do? What? You remember that one where the guys, there was all these little games and you would get slimed. It was Mark Summers, I think, hosted it. It was called What Would You Do? It had a big logo on the back wall with like an eyeball that would come out. It was like a whole game
I remember
show.
the show, yeah.
You
I don't
remember
remember the show.
It's
But I
called What
remember
Would
you
You
getting
Do?
slimed, but I don't remember it being What Would You Do? But this is a whole YouTube channel, and they do social experiments where they're actual actors, and then they go and they interview the bystanders and see like how they get involved with this. And this one is about, well, we'll see.
Hit me with a quick pause. I grew up in the South, and I've had this argument about the Confederate flag with hundreds of different Southerners from all different opinions. Yeah. And one of the ones I hear all the time is that it doesn't have anything to do with slavery. And I just want to state my opinion on this. Of course it has something to do with fucking slavery, you dumb motherfuckers. That's what the whole fucking states' rights shit was about. And like
states' rights to own slaves, baby.
And if you want to come at me with some like, oh, I got a PhD in history or some shit like that, like, okay, like maybe there are other contributing factors like every war. But slavery was a major contributing factor, and I think that is if we can't see that as a people, and we're gonna make this argument still to this day, because like I said, I've had this conversation a lot of times with people, man, and they go back to that point over and over. It does not represent slavery. It's about states' rights. It's my heritage. It is not offensive.
Could it be a symbol for independence? Could it be a symbol for going against the grain, that I don't want to get a vaccine? You know?
It is a symbol that was used by seceding forces within our union, yes. So it could be a symbol of revolution or rebellion. And that's why they call it the rebel flag.
Right.
Well, and I think that when people make that argument, like, it doesn't represent slavery, I think that they're internalizing. They're like, it doesn't represent slavery, and then the back end of that sentence is to me. Yeah. And it's like, I'm not racist. I don't own slaves, so it doesn't represent slavery to me. Yeah. And like he said, it's just part of my heritage. You know, like, I'm from Mississippi. This is what we do or whatever. And it's like, right. But, like, because you can make all those same things. Like, well, why don't you just put the "Don't Tread on Me" flag on there? That's about state rights. That's about the "Come and Take It" flag. Just adopt the flag from Texas, the "Come and Take It" flag. That's all about state rights. Ain't nobody gonna say you were racist for wearing that flag.
I just wanted to make that point because that woman said what I have said many times, which is like, it is about the states' rights to secede from the union because they wanted to own slaves, and people push back against that.
Well,
in my experience,
in one of the interactions, the one dude goes, "Well, I'm German." He's like, "But you don't see me walking around with a goddamn swastika on my jacket." He was like, "Would that be okay?" You know, and I was like, "Oof, damn!" The logic in that is just hitting heavy. You know, he was like, "Shit," you know, even like he's like, you know,
should we raise the South African apartheid flag? Like, I mean, I'm from South Africa.
Hey, my great grandfather was in the Ku Klux Klan. Okay, it's my heritage.
right.
I'm not racist. I'm just trying to honor my grandfather.
Yeah, these very clean sheets.
On God, but it was interesting because this is the one conversation I was saying that would really tie into what we talked about earlier with the who's right though, who's got the rights, because there's a lot of people in this who go in and they say, well, look, you can be offended and I get that, you know, like I'm offended, but this man has the right to wear whatever the hell he wants to wear. Like if this dude, because it was something, you know, they kind of run the experiment, they're like, well, I demand you take that jacket off, you know, and stuff, and then everybody's like, all right, well, look,
this is America, but he can't tell him to take his coat. And so take his coat.
And so there was very interesting sides to both of it, because I mean, we've seen this play out with a MAGA hat, you know, in the sense of people getting their ass beat and chased down the street because they're wearing a hat, you know. And it's like, look, you can disagree, and then the one lady says, well, you know, you got the right to wear it, but I also got the right to bitch and tell you that it's racist as hell, you know. And so I get that, but it really it begs the question, you know, because I just brought up the whole thing of independence, right? Symbology and symbols, it means something different to everybody. Even though one lady said, well, I'm not Christian. Take off your cross. Why are you over there wearing a cross? That offends me. Take that off.
The Crusades were terrible.
You know what I mean? Like, y'all massacred, whatever, you know? Like you said, y'all are polluting our political system, whatever you want to say. But it's like, when do we have the right to decide what somebody else and how somebody else can express themselves because we find offense to it, you know? And that was one of the common threads I saw with a lot of these interactions, where people were saying like, yes, it offends me. Yes, I think it's racist and slave as hell. But, you know, you also are choosing to be offended by it. You know, there's a lot of people who like, when they get to the part where people start kind of sticking up for the rebel guy, you know, and they're talking about like, you know, the one lady says, just that, she's like, well, you know, I don't, she kind of talks about that where they're like, let it go already, you know, like, let it go. And
you guys won, let it
go. Like, you know, they're saying like, you're making it about slavery right now, you know, like, yes, it stood for that, but you don't necessarily know what this guy means by wearing it. He's already said that he's not racist. He already said that he didn't mean to offend you or whatever. But then you're like, you know, and I just, you know, where is that line draw, you know, where you can just take offense to somebody else's thing and then they're, you know, somehow doing something to you, and they just came out wearing whatever shirt. I'm wearing a shirt with tits on it. You know what I mean? And it's like, you're like, hey, we got kids out here and stuff. And it's like, sorry, you know what I mean?
Shield
like,
your eyes.
You know, exactly like she said, look away. You know, like, you don't got to look at it. And so I thought that was very interesting. But then it begged the question, like, is that racist? You know, is it racist to come out and wear some type of symbology that a lot of people, not symbol. Did I use the wrong word?
Well, you said wearing symbology, but yeah. Like,
well, symbology is not a word. It's symbolism.
Okay.
Yeah, every time you say that, I just go back to that Boondock Saints
averagely intelligent,
where he's like, the symbology, and he's like, it's symbolism.
What's the symbology there?
Symbology?
And I'm sure the word you were looking for was symbolism. What is the symbolism there?
What is the symbolism?
Yeah.
I wanted to tell John, I was like, go ahead, just clip that in there for me when he says symbology. But now that we've played it up, there's no need.
Okay, fine. I appreciate it. But then, so if you come out and you wear some type of symbol that a lot of people deem disrespectful or a lot of people deem racist, but you yourself are not racist, right? Like, so, what if you just really are not racist? What if to you, that flag represents independence or going against the grain or for whatever fucking thing you're going to make up about it, right? Yeah. But to you honestly, that's what you believe, How can somebody else deem you a racist?
Well, I mean, they can. Everybody gets the right to their own opinions. But I think that the solution for this is it's not through force. So, I don't think you can take the guy's jacket off. Or, I mean, you could tell him, hey, I think you should take that jacket off. But if he doesn't, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. I don't think that you should be beating up people because they're wearing a jacket that you find offensive.
Forced removal of hate symbols.
Yeah, and so it's
it's a little rough.
But I would say that you brought up a good point with the swastika, which actually was a symbol that was adopted and then slightly changed from a Buddhist symbol. And that's the thing is the Buddhists practice non-attachment. So they were like, oh yeah, people aren't fucking with this symbol that we used to have. We just not gonna wear it no more.
Yeah, we're off with it.
Yeah, and it's it doesn't change anything about the Buddhist practices or the religion. The Buddhists were like, yeah, we just let that go, and it was fine. And it's I think that that's the most thing. It's like that dude in the grocery store was like, nah, not today, brother. Just let that go. Because he was like, look, I feel it. I'm sure that black dude was like, I couldn't hear because we were making jokes the whole time. But I'm sure he was like, look, I don't like the fact that this guy's wearing a Confederate flag either. But am I really going to make a big deal about it? This old fucking white dude? What am I? Is it my job to change this man's mind? And
waste of breath.
Yeah, it's a waste of fucking time, buddy. There go some guy that I think is racist. Yeah. Whatever. Hopefully you guys never have to see each other again for the rest of your lives, And it's that's what I would say is at the end, everybody gets a right to do everything that they've done in those scenarios because it didn't result to somebody trying to take his coat or fucking beat the shit out of him or whatever. As soon as you start assaulting people, well, now you're in the wrong. Because regardless of whether or not you think it's offensive, you don't have a right to just beat that guy up.
Yeah, true.
But he has a right to wear the coat. You have a right to be offended if you want to. You have a right to bitch at him. He has a right to say what he thinks about it. And y'all can have an argument in the grocery store about it. But as soon as somebody says, I'm gonna hit you with the as soon as somebody puts some hands on somebody else, I'm like, oh, you just fucked up.
Yeah.
You just made yourself look like an ass.
You know what you just made me think of too, because we were talking about Nazi symbolism and stuff like that. I was like, didn't Prince Harry dress up as Hitler one year in a full SS outfit for Halloween? I don't remember if it was Prince Harry or one of the princes, but it was one of the
Wasn't
royals.
the one that just died, did he?
No, not Prince Philip. No, it was one of the younger ones.
I was
one of the two
that
boys.
would have been. I mean, if he would have been young enough to actually do that when there was SS walking around.
Yeah, it was one of Diana's children, and they dressed in. There he is with the swastika armband, is what it was.
Huh. It's for Halloween.
Yeah.
That's it right there. Yeah.
Yep.
Harry the Nazi.
Well, and hey, I think that it's if I had to agree with anybody the most out of those scenarios, it was the black dude that was like, hey, yo, don't start that while I'm in this grocery store. And the other dude, the Puerto Rican dude that was like, hey, look, he's allowed to wear that if he wants to, and what comes, comes.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't advocate for anybody beating anybody up for what they're wearing, but as a person who is out living in society, there's ramifications, there's consequences to your actions, whether or not that the consequences are justified or not. There's consequences to your actions.
I felt that kind of white savior moment with the kid with the ponytail, where he was just like, I see where he's coming from, but you have a right to.
Okay, I didn't want to derail this. Was it just me or did that kid only have one eyebrow?
I did not pay attention.
I swear that kid only had one eyebrow. I was having a hard time paying attention to what was going on the whole time. I was like, is this dude missing an eyebrow? I'm not trying to be a dick about it, but I was like, now that you brought him back up, I can't help myself.
I used to be a guy with no eyebrows. So
that's true. But having no eyebrows is less conspicuous than only having one eyebrow.
Yeah.
It was the asymmetry. I'm a symmetricalist.
It's a very Jaden Smith energy.
Dude,
what that is.
and what I'm getting at too is with this whole thing is I feel like today's culture, right? Like we are so led by the nose by media. You know, we're seeing this even in the sense of what we're talking about with the vaccine and stuff and everything. It's like that media kind of rules our like mindset towards everything, and they do whatever they think is kind of culturally relevant or whatever they can kind of stir the most people with, right? Like whatever can kind of sway most people. And I think that this idea of racism has become such a gaslit type thing where it's like, you know,
all of a sudden it's so big. Like
everything that we talk about, almost every headline, every incident, right, is immediately race driven. Like there's some type of racial motivation behind it immediately. Like I said, if you wear a MAGA hat, you're a racist. It's not that you are a Republican, that you're just supporting your candidate. Nobody assumes that maybe this guy just wants less taxes because he's rich. You know, it's just immediately like, oh, it's a race thing. It's a race thing. It's a race thing. And it's always pushed as that like agenda. And so I'm starting to like, it almost begs the question, like we almost can't actually find real racism anymore because now it's the Papa John's guy said the N-word.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's diluted.
Dude, it's diluted. You know what I mean? To the point where now people are almost desensitized. Like they don't even want to deal with this issue anymore. Yeah. They don't want to actually call out, you know, real racism or whatever. Like I said, it's just
I can talk about it from my own personal experience. When anytime anybody's accused of being a racist, my default position is that guy's probably not a racist.
He's probably not.
And so that's the problem because like back in the day, if you were considered a racist, everybody's first thing was like, we should not associate with that person because even like nobody should be calling, like you say a lot. Nobody's saying that we, you know, or I think it was with the Bill Cosby thing where you were like, if you get accused of raping people 65 times, you probably did some raping. Maybe you didn't rape all those people, but ain't nobody over here accusing me of raping nobody. Right. Like, you know what I mean? So like the accusations, like they, in a court of law, they have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And you're assumed innocent until proven guilty. But in a court of public opinion, accusations are like 90% of the whole fucking thing.
Not to mention video evidence. I watched a 24 hours Storm the Capitol Hulu exclusive ABC News event. And it was like a 45-minute, hour-long thing with all kinds of footage I hadn't seen before. Really good timeline. I'll link it in the description because I don't know if it's on YouTube, but I saw it on Hulu and it was amazing. Like I kind of want to watch it again, but there was a scene that I had seen parts of that just stood out to me visually as such because we had talked about the Capitol attack. Didn't have a lot of black people in that crowd.
Nope.
I watched intently throughout this entire little timeline documentary, and I think I saw one guy who was mixed. Could have been Hispanic.
Hard to tell these days.
Hard to tell. He was multiracial. But one of the scenes that just stood out to me, and like I said, I hadn't seen the full tape. You remember in that episode, we saw a black police officer, Capitol police officer with a baton trying to hold back an entire crowd from a doorway, right? I saw there's an extended version of that. He gets chased up these stairs. He gets all the way to the top of these stairs. There's just kind of him and a cameraman. And the cameraman keeps like kind of backing up as fast as he can. And you can just see the black cop running up the stairs. And like this wave of white people is like coming in like it's a game of tag and like coming real close to him, getting real
Sharp
close.
imagery.
And he's like, and he's like, whoa, the guy's trying to touch him. And he's like, we're here for you. Like, you know, saying like real QAnon type shit. They get to the top of the staircase, and in one direction is the chambers. And this Capitol police officer turns and starts kind of leading this group away from that until eventually he rounds a corner and backup arrives. And when the backup arrives, it's a couple white officers plus himself, and the guys at the leading the swell of protesters starts really saying again, we're doing this for you. You know, you guys you're part of us, you know, things like that. And just that imagery of that black officer getting chased up those stairs by an all white crowd was like, just viscerally, how like I couldn't take the race out of it. I tried. I was just like, well, you know, if this was a white cop, you know, they'd probably be doing the same thing. But then I'm like, well, if the cameras weren't there and that backup didn't arrive, what would have happened to that cop? You know, because a cop did die, and like people could have gotten injured much worse in that event. And boy, did that shit really sit weird with me. You know what I mean?
You're saying, because this also came up today. And I can't help.
I haven't watched this video yet.
I can't help but think that it's that there's racial intent here. You know what I mean? And then it's like you said, like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing.
Saw this morning.
Yeah. Did you watch the video?
I watched the video.
Yeah.
I watched the video. I put a whole thing in my stories about it.
It's fucking wild, man. But you know, to me, it's like you automatically, like, it's like I said, you're almost groomed to automatically assume that it's because this dude's black, you know? I'm not saying it's not. I have no fucking clue, but that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
Is I have no fucking clue. Right. Maybe this dude's just frustrated and pissed off because he's power hungry little dick cop and that guy's not doing what he wants him to do. Yep. You know what I mean? Because this dude's also in uniform. So I'm just like that. In my personal opinion, my uniform always trumped my color, right? Like people don't fuck with black people, but they kind of fuck with black soldiers, you know what I mean? It's like still like even in the back of the day, you know, like if you was like a military man, you still had a certain level of respect that, you know,
yeah, I mean,
those people just love to, you know, assign to you.
In my personal opinion with this specific event, I was just absolutely disgusted at the police officer when he pepper sprayed this guy.
Great.
I was
Just
like,
gross.
what the fuck, dude? I was like, he's not posing a threat to you. You just don't like that he's not complying with you, and now you look like a fucking douchebag.
And you're just whipping out tasers. And,
yeah, like I'm gonna fucking. You better get out of that car.
Just for
it's like that scene from the Django movie where he's gonna whip that black girl, and so that he can whip her, he needs to tie her arms around her tree. He's like, you better give me that arm.
Yeah.
And it's like, or else what? You're gonna whip me? Like,
Right.
what the fuck are you talking about? Like, and it's just, it's so ridiculous. Like, you could see, like you said, that ego shit all up in that.
Yeah. It was,
but I also said in that thing at the same time, as much as disgusted as I was at that police officer, this guy's creating his own problems because he's not complying with these police officers.
I agree.
You know, like what if it's true that you didn't do any crimes and you are an upstanding citizen, then get his badge number, take it up with the judge, because I've never heard of anybody being shot in a courtroom. Well, I mean, I guess I've heard of it, but it's very rare, much more rare than people being shot out on the streets by police officers, that you get killed in a courtroom when you're arguing with a judge. Don't argue with the police officer, argue with the judge. Get his badge number, do what the dude says, handle it later.
Yeah, I just not just for your own safety. You know what I mean? I just think
for your own safety.
I just think that that's not the time to try to
Stand
make a
on your principles
stand
and shit,
or try to, you know.
And the worst part is that guy was so calm. He was like, look, man, like I didn't do anything wrong. He had his hands out the window. And I felt so bad for this guy because I was like, dude, you're doing everything right except for getting out of this car. Yeah. As if you had just got out of this car, you'd be fine. Yeah. Probably. I don't know.
My question, though, is, was he within his rights to refuse to get out of the car? Because
the officer said that he was detained.
Yeah,
he said you're now detained.
I'm arresting you.
I'm arresting you.
Now
get
you're
out of the
resisting
car.
arrest.
Now you're resisting arrest.
What was
so you have
the
to
charge that he was?
They didn't say.
They don't have to actually. They don't have to give you a charge while they're arresting you. You have a right to know your charge once you are in court. But you do not have a right, like they don't have to tell you what you're being charged with to be arrested.
That's why you always see the guys who are doing the testing your rights type thing. They're always like, "Am I being detained? Am I being detained?" And then the cop will be like, "Well, you know, I just want to see some ID."
Because the thing is if he says that you're detained, and then they have to have a charge, because otherwise he can get in trouble. They can't just detain somebody for no reason. So, you know, you could argue that gives them enough time to make up some charge later, but a made up charge is much harder to stick than an actual charge that he knew when he detained you. But and I would argue that there was really no charge that he was saying when he was detaining this man. Like, it's a traffic violation. Like, we don't know what happened before this because it's such a short video. It's like I only saw like a 3-minute clip of it. But
they got like 6 minutes of it. Yeah.
So it's longer. The actual incident is much longer than any of us are going to be able to see. But it's a traffic stop, and at the moment where he says, "I am detaining you. You are now under arrest," you have to get out of the car and you have to put your hands behind your back. You have to get arrested. Unfortunately, it sucks, especially if you're innocent.
Especially if you're fearing for your life.
But I'd say that you have a much higher chance of getting killed by not complying than if you just got out of the car.
Well, I will point you towards that case where that man was crawling on his hands and knees, and that cop with that M4 that was pointing at him, who was telling him to comply and telling him, "Put your hands over your head," and then in the next breath saying, "Crawl towards me."
Yeah.
I didn't say it's impossible.
Well, no,
I just said you have a higher
not,
chance.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, like, I want to bring a very specific point to that. Did you know what that police officer's M4 had etched in the little ejection chamber slot? It said, "You're fucked." So I mean, like this guy, whether he was complying or not, was probably going to get fucking iced by this guy. Somebody was by this guy eventually. Dude, this guy wanted to fucking ice people.
And that's what I got from the video. Like I said, like that's the only thing I got from the video. He didn't say, "You fucking N-word, I'm gonna kill you. Get the fuck out of the," all he said was like, "Oh, you won't do what I say. Do what I say. Do what I say. So it's like there was a very ego-driven thing in that, right? I'm a police officer type shit, right?
And you could tell that the other officer was like looking at him, and he was like trying to be like,
he was new.
Hey, I'm not trying to be in this fucking case with you. Like, please, for the love of God, just let me get this other guy out of here.
That's a whole nother conversation too about how bad it sucks to not be able to stand up and say like this is wrong. Like
hey, Jim, I think you're being a little bit too volatile. Right. Let's listen to what he has to say. But sir, you are, just so you know, my coworker has said that you are under arrest. So regardless of what you tell us, we have to arrest you now.
But it was just like, you could obviously tell by the dynamic of the situation that he was the junior officer and the other guy was the senior officer, and he could have been new, rookie on the job, whatever.
That one Asian officer in the Derek Chauvin case that got charged along with him, he was also a rookie officer. He's sitting there at parade rest, like blocking the view of the cameras as George Floyd died. And it's like, Jesus, man, like I really wish there was some sort of mechanism where they could be like, hey, Jim, could you take your knee off his neck? I don't think he's going to be. He's unresponsive. But instead it's like, well, I got to back the blue.
But then also too, it's not even always that. Like you said, you ever been at a job? You know what I mean? You see a guy and he's like, hey, check it out. This is what I do. I sneak cookies in the back and I eat the cookies. You know what I mean? Like, you want a cookie? And you're like, should I be doing this?
Now I have to tell on you or else I'm in trouble.
You know what I mean? And you're new. You don't even know. Like, it's your second day on the job. And you're like, I feel like this is wrong, but like, I don't really know. I just barely know these motherfuckers' names. I don't know how shit goes around here. Yep. And that's what that cop had on his face, was just like oh shit, like what kind of situation am I in? Like, what's the protocol here? Yeah. Like, how do I just run? Do I just like leave? Do I just get in the car and call my supervisor? Like, what the fuck do I do here? And so it sucks for him too. But in that situation, it was fucked up regardless. Like you said, he could have got murked on the street. He could have got murked in the car. I just think that's the thing too. That's why I don't go protest. You see what I'm saying? It's too inflamed of a situation to like try and actually effectively get anything done. You know what I mean? Like you said, you're more likely to just get out there and get smacked in the face with tear gas than you are to like change somebody's opinion or mind or something in that state,
Or you might get caught up inside the Capitol building and the FBI tweeting out pictures of your photo saying if you have any information that could lead to the arrest of this person that's wanted in connection with the riots.
You bank with Bank of America.
But if you read the comments in the videos that were posted that I saw on social media, it was everything about just like, it's because he's black. Black man, this is how black people are treated in America. This is how, yada, yada. And I would argue that's, I don't know. You know what I mean? I definitely feel that perception. If
it's what you've been told your entire life, then it's hard not to.
But it's hard not to.
It's hard not to see that anytime something like this happens. Whereas if you were raised under a different perception and you just like I remember having a conversation with my father about when the police come around and they start asking you to do shit, you do it. And like at the time I was a weed smoking pothead and shit, so I didn't like. It's not like I fucking like the police at all. But at the same time, I said it in my stories. I treat the police as I would any other person ordering me around with weapons. I do what they say. Like I'm not about to stand here and be like. Do you feel
like your dad told you that because you're black, or you just think he told you that just because?
He just told me that because that's what you like. It's for your safety. You comply with the police. Mm. Like he had nothing to do with like I don't.
Because I've seen a lot of videos of like white people just like. Fuck you, you fucking pig. You get your fucking hands off me. And they'll be like, sir, you need to calm down. Sir, you need to relax, And so it's just like, it's hard to say. And then that's the one thing about it too is if somebody's being racist, they don't often come out and say they're racist, right? So like the system is built on racism. It has very racial tendencies, like systemic racism, right? It exists, but nobody's out here wanting to like admit that the system's racist. You don't want to come out and be like, oh yeah, our laws is racist as hell. Like, yeah, we hate black people.
Every once in a while, you'll get somebody to slip up in like leaked audio. Right. Like there was one where it was, like the Republican whip in the House, like a couple years ago or some shit like that was on. They caught him on tape talking to one of the other Republican leaders being like, yeah, man, this whole busing him into school districts, we're just really trying to keep the blacks out of the white schools. Right. Like they were just like very open and raw about their intention, even though all you hear is like, oh no, that has nothing to do with race. It's about school choice.
Sure, right. Yeah, you said it's about states' rights.
Yeah,
It's
you
not
find
about
some coded
slaves.
language to use and then push an agenda.
Yeah, and so I get where the gray is, and then that's why people are always afraid. Like you said, when they hear the word, you just automatically want to assume that there's some type of racial underseeding there. But it's so sketchy when we're out there trying to manhunt malintent,
from someone's mind.
Right. You know what I mean? That's what creates all this cancel culture and people getting beat up for just doing random
thought
things.
police.
Yeah, you made me think about this earlier when you were talking about Papa John's and stuff like that. It's like, well, how many musicians or comedians are we going to attack when it comes to the use of the N-word and stuff like that? Like, how long before Lil Pump's Cuban heritage is not enough for him to say the N-word? How long before, one of these comedians who uses it as a punchline is going to get canceled for using it as a punchline? Right. I'm not advocating using the hard R as a punchline. I'm just saying comedy is different than everything else. There's nothing else like comedy, satire, whatever you want to call it, when you're trying to say something outrageous to elicit a response. I mean, that's an art form, man. It's an art form. It's an art, and restricting people, and same with music, restricting the art forms. I did
it earlier in this podcast in our first section. I don't know if anybody caught it, but I said herbal, and I've grown up saying that word, and I'm trying not to say it anymore. But every once in a while, I say it. Now, I don't think I've ever dropped a hard R, like unless it was in satire or in reference to somebody else dropping a hard R or whatever. Usually, I just say "mer." But like it's like you said, it's so gray that it's like, am I racist? Am I a self-hating black person? Like, how does that work? Like,
well, I would argue that everybody has a little bit of it in them. I always have prescribed to this idea. Even as I was doing research for this, I didn't bring it up, but I was watching this old 1950s debate of high school kids talking about prejudice and how it exists in their schools and stuff. Now, this is in the early 1950s, so it was cool. Like, they were all open prejudice, right? Like, it was just like, I don't fuck with that dude because the Chinese did this to us and this and that, and that's why I have the right to not fuck with them. And they're like, well, you did this to blacks in America, so that's why we don't fuck with you and this and that and blah blah blah. And so it was, but each one of them acknowledged that they had a prejudice to somebody on the panel or some other group of people for whatever justification they had it for, and so it's like, I feel like that it's a learned behavior, right? And we talk about, or I do, especially in my personal brand and stuff, about things get stuck in your subconscious. You might have grown up and you had an uncle who just perpetuated some dumbass idea about black people, or something that I experienced a lot in my school growing up, where how come you don't run fast? You're black. Aren't you supposed to be good at basketball? And it's these stereotypes that would deem that I have some type of quality, or that I'm supposed to be superior at certain activities and things because I'm of a certain race. And I always thought, like, damn, y'all are dumb. You know what I mean? Like, that's what every time racism comes up, very rarely in today's society, not rarely, sometimes it's hateful driven, but most of the time I feel like it's miseducation and stupidity.
I would love to step in on that point. I have someone close to me, I won't name names. I have someone very close to me that they used to see the comedy in the incredibly racist songs of the antebellum South. Specifically, one of the artists, I don't remember his name, and I don't even want to he's probably dead, but I still don't want to give him the credit. But he just sang these very racially charged, very fucked up songs, right? And this person in my life found the humor in that. Their friend group or whatever found the humor in it too. And they would sing them or sing along or joke about it or have it on a CD or whatever. And it was done in satire and jest. Nowadays, 10, 15, almost 20 years removed from those experiences, I feel like I would clown them and be like, it's not even funny. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. It's just stupid. It's ignorance. You're talking about a guy who is singing about black people as if they're animals. Right. And we know that we're all the same fucking thing. Right. Like, we have the science, you know what I mean? The color of your skin does not dictate your smarts or your being. And that's what these songs are all about. And back in the day, I didn't even see it as racist. I didn't even, an iota of no part of me was like, that person's a racist for singing along to those racist songs.
You're just a dumbass.
Because Chappelle's Show, all these other things, all this Mind Dementia, is all these racially charged comedy bits that were all over our media. So at the time, it was like, shock jock. It was like pushing the envelope of racial humor. And nowadays, I think that same person, if you expose them to that and said, like, this is what you used to do you feel comfortable doing it anymore? I think that any person who's evolved with the times, I feel, or who's been part of the culture for the past 10, 20 years would be like, yeah, that's cringe.
Yeah.
That's stupid and it's cringe and it's not funny because I see the weight of that word. Because I think maybe it took some of these events that we saw unfold, Trayvon Martin, whatever you want to point to, Tamir Rice, George Floyd, maybe it's that hitting our culture that kind of pushed our culture into this, like, hey, this comedy racism that you've been gorging yourself on in the 2000s, it isn't so funny anymore.
Yeah. What I'm mostly afraid of, from what I'm starting to see as we evolve through this whole process, is that we're fighting the fire with the fire, right? Like, you would hope that the answer to that hate and stuff and that racism and stuff would be love and acceptance. But that's not what I'm seeing the case of. White racism is on the rise out here. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally acceptable these days to be racist against white people and say, oh, he's an old white guy, and so that's why he gets this, and he's rich, and he's this and that, and that's why he's privileged, and he's this and that, and to assign all these qualities to somebody just because they're white, and it's like, that's racism.
Yeah, I grew up being racist towards white people my whole life.
Yeah.
I am not a racist person, but I've been openly racist to white people as a means of comedic intent mostly my entire life. It's up until recently that I've seen how much of a problem it is.
I think it's going to be a problem too. And that's what I really worry, is that we're kind of pushing out, because it's done a lot. Like you said, the Chappelle Show and all these things did a lot to really open the conversation up. But then now it's like, it's just everything is that. Everything is racism. Everything is like, based on our skin color. We're talking about, enacting laws based on race color and doing this or not doing that, or saying this or not saying that, or everything seems to be just dictated on the color of your skin, as if like we have no other qualities as human beings besides our gender and our color of our skin and your age. And
God forbid it's a meritocracy, because that's just racism rooted into the system.
Right.
Like,
because don't you know, being on time is a white thing.
Well, that's the
It's like, what are you talking
when you start
about?
talking about that racial theory stuff,
Critical race theory.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. And that's the issue, is like this idea of, because like you said, some of those things, if you ask Carlos Mencia or Dave Chappelle, like, what were you trying to do with those comedy bits? They might say, I was trying to get people to be more open to these conversations or something like that. But now it's gone so far to that end of the spectrum that it's like, you have to see race in everything. Like, if you don't, like, colorblindness is no longer the right thing. Now it's like, what you're doing with colorblindness is you're not acknowledging the racism that it's happening, and that makes you like race adjacent or something like that. Like, and it's like, I don't agree with that. Like, I thought the whole idea was colorblindness. Like, I judge you based on the content of your character, not on the color of your skin.
That's racist.
Yeah, but it's coming for MLK.
And that's what they were talking about in that conversation with the Confederate flag thing too, is a lot of it, and people were saying like, let it go, right? And I get that it's extremely hard, but at the same time, it's like we're just dragging history through like everything, we're just like, it's like people do it in their own personal lives too. It's not even like this is just a systemic problem.
It's
like,
our baggage.
It's our baggage. It's our baggage. And to heal from trauma, the first step you got to do is you got to put the fucking bag down. Just put the bag down and walk away from it, right? And just walk away from it. Leave it in the past. Like they said, just leave it in the fucking past. Let it fucking go. It sounds insensitive, but it's not. It's the only way to move forward in a united way, is to just stop making it about that. Stop seeing it. But in the closing, and like the last kind of point I wanted to make about this, I would argue that it's not us. I don't think it's the people. I think that most people are in this side of the conversation, but it's very media driven, and it seems to be very
vocal minority.
I don't like to be this guy with the conspiracy thing or whatever, but sometimes you just it's used as a ploy. Like I said, they realize that they can influence the masses a lot through this, and they kind of create that segregation between us. And this is what I'll bring up. You brought up the fact of an artist, right? And how this plays out in art. This is a song that I want to bring to now. Obviously, we can't play the song for you guys because just never make it through copyrights. So I'm going to play the video. We're going to mute the audio. I did bring up the lyrics, so you guys will be able to read the lyrics of the song. I'm going to show them. I know that they've never heard this song, so we'll listen to it. I encourage you to go listen to it for yourself. And I'm also going to reference the music video so that we can kind of get into the comments. But this is a song called Racism by Adam Calhoun. And he's going to kind of flirt with that line that we were just talking about in art. Those are the two verses. He's going to just repeat the chorus.
Yeah.
Let me show you the music video here to this. You can see the guy. And then I'm going to go into the comments.
I don't get the line. They fall apart. A bunch of Mac daddies.
Yeah,
that's a weird line.
But just based on the video, the song, everything you've seen so far, what do you think the comments are going to be like? Right.
I think it's some Lowry's. It's going to be spicy. It's going to be some spice.
Lowry's.
Yeah.
I'm black. Who the hell is thumbing this down? He clearly knows the struggle more than most of those fake wokesters. I'm a black man and I don't even see anything wrong with this or with this song. I gotta fucking expand it out because I can't see.
What's that, Rod? You can't read?
Yeah, it's fucking far away. It's always people making a big deal because a white man said the word nigga. This song should be selling millions right now because it's more relevant at a time like this. I'm from West Monroe, Calhoun, Louisiana. I grew up in the country where at night the damn bugs make loud noise at night after night. I grew up around dirt and gravel roads, high tall ass grass. We used to drink beer and moonshine out of glass mason jars. I really think this song is it. 1.3. Oh, by the way, 1.2 thousand upvotes, 1.3 thousand upvotes. I love how he attacked both racist stereotypes. Guess it must be Trump's fault because you making bad decisions. Goddamn. When you show this song to someone and they get offended, it just means they're a part of the problem. Damn straight. These country white boys ain't nothing to play with. In the end, we all the same. To any American reading this right now, I love you. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, indigenous, etc. You are my people. Even if we weren't born here but came for a better life, I love you. There would be no America without people sharing their cultures. You are what makes America great. Like everything else in nature, people are chaotic yet beautiful. There are good and bad people of all colors, ages, sexes, and nations. Our complexity is what makes us human. That's why our opinion, thoughts, and ideas differ.
I have a quick question.
Go.
Do you think he trimmed the comments?
This dude doesn't really seem like the type of dude who's really into that type of thing, but I don't know. I really
13 million views on this video.
It's 13
so it's very
million
unlikely
views
that
with
he's paying somebody a full-time
7,000 comments. So, I don't know. That's why we got to band together and fight our oppressor. The fact they let him do this shit in the hood is a testament to how real his message is. I
thought that too when I seen them black people in there. I was like at first it just showed like a scene of them, and I was like, oh, it's pretty easy to just get a couple of guys on the street, be like, hey, I'm shooting a music video, I'm gonna be in it real quick, and then just catch a couple of shots. But for him to be rapping that song with them there, saying this stuff about them, I'm like, okay, well, these dudes obviously understand what this guy's trying to say, they at the very least are not offended by what he's saying, or they're getting paid a lot.
But and I didn't read like a long way down, and I'm sure that there's some people in here who are just like, he said the N-word.
No, I don't see a single one.
But 3.5 thousand dislikes are the ones who don't like the truth. They like to hear that the lies are told in their ears. But it's just overwhelming support for what seems to be a legitimate message to me as well, where he's just essentially saying like, look, you could be a piece of shit and be white. You could be a piece of shit and be black. You could be an awesome person and be white, awesome person and be black. Like this idea that, often when people talk about too, and they say this, and I think in the comments where like, I used to make the joke about like, if you're white and you think Trump is trying to take care of you, you're a dumbass. Trump ain't looking out for you.
He's looking out for rich people.
He's looking out for rich people. He don't give a fuck about white people or black people. He don't even care. He was like, he's looking out for his people, and his people are rich people. And like, but it seems to be this media driven thing where it's like that everybody out here cares about race, and everybody out here is like racist or not racist or whatever. Even when you saw in the video with the Confederate flag dude, most people are like, yeah, it's probably racist, but I'm also just gonna go about my day and live my fucking life.
I mean, eat my food.
Aren't you mad?
You know what I'm saying? Like,
no. Oh, you mean people are out here doing things I think are dumb? Strange.
Oh wow, groundbreaking.
Yeah. If I stopped my life every time I saw somebody doing something I thought was dumb, I would have no life.
I'd never leave the house.
Yeah.
And so I was surprised though. I mean, as I came across,
that's not what I expected.
I was like, I heard, because look, I just came across it randomly doing my research, and I was like, what is this song? It's like, oh no. I was like, oh no,
buddy, you can't say those words.
I was like, the internet about to kill you, bruh. And then I got in the comments and I was like,
but that's the thing. Let somebody at CNN or Fox News or NBC or any of these media companies, like you said, let them get a hold of this, and they'll spin the whole narrative that this dude's a terrible person. And I think that, again, I'm not going to ascribe malintent to these media corporations in the same way that I wouldn't do it to the MLB, because I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. But what I will say is that these are businesses. They do what is best for them and their bottom line. They don't give a fuck about black people. They don't give a fuck about white people. They don't even give a fuck about people who buy their shit, just as long as people are buying their shit. They don't care who it is. If you buy their shit, then they're for you. And the media companies know that, if it bleeds, it leads. If it incites anger, that gets more viewers, and we sell advertisement based on viewer numbers. So I'm going to play whatever it is that I need to play to get people looking so that I get that ad money.
Truth be told.
So it's like, I don't think that they're bad people. They're just doing what everybody else is doing, which is out here trying to make their own way.
Looking out for number one.
Yeah,
that's 100%.
I'm surprised they're not backing away from social justice issues a little bit more with the whole get woke, go broke thing,
Yeah, I think that that's because the political wins, like a politician is trained to and keyed in on those political wins, and they can shift real quickly. But corporations are such massive things that they can't turn the ship that fast. You know, it's like the Titanic thing. Like by the time they noticed that the iceberg was coming, they didn't even have enough time to turn the ship and avoid it. Like it's just coming. So I think that that's really what it is. There's instances where you can say that that's not necessarily the case, considering that, you know, like the shift in advertisement when the pandemic hit, they pulled all their old ads and started filming these new ads that were all about the pandemic and stuff like that. So it's like, and I remember that happening very quickly. But I think that that's really the case, is like, for some reason, and I think it might have to do with the whole very vocal minority point that you made earlier, John, which is that people who think the way that we're discussing right now, the Adam Calhoun thing, like, who don't really think that racism is a big issue, they're not talking about it. And so if you're not talking about it, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so if the only people that are talking in social media and online and in these surveys that these companies are putting out, if the only people that are talking are the people saying one narrative, then the company's gonna be like, oh, well, that must be the narrative. So we gotta follow that. And that may or may not be the case. So
it's dangerous because it, like I said, to me, it can lead you away from the real issue. When we looked at the video of that man getting assaulted in his car or whatever in that rest stop, you know what I saw? Police brutality. Yep. And that's what I consistently see. When I saw the George Floyd thing, I saw police brutality. Yep. I don't know. You know, I think that they're just as capable of sitting on a white man's neck because they are black man's. I think that you're just as likely to get beat up. I don't care what skin color you are. What I see is a lot of ego-driven people who are in law enforcement because they get to like be the big guy with the authority, and then they're like really drawn to that.
It's the power drug,
right? You know, they're probably bullied as a kid. I don't know whatever. They come from families where they felt really weak, and so now they're looking for some place where they can feel like they're strong and powerful, and they're in their law enforcement. You know, and that's the problem. And as long as we're sitting here turning that conversation towards a race conversation and racism in America and like racism,
and all of a sudden the whole Derek Chauvin trial is about trying to prove if he's racist or not.
And it's like let's get to the point, which is that these cops got too much fucking power and authority that they can just spray you because you won't do what they say, or that you do have to shut the fuck up and just do what they say, whether it's right or wrong or anything like that. And the threat is that if you don't do that, you're dead. You know, and instead we're having these overarching conversations on whether or not America's racist or not, and this and that. And I think that detracts from the real problems, you know?
That's why we elected Biden instead of Bernie, in my opinion. It's like Bernie was talking about class war, and Biden was appealing to the social justice of, you know, we need to raise up minorities.
Yep. I even heard somebody, I can't remember who was saying this, but I think it was actually Kanye West, but even saying like the fact that this man could come out here and tell you you're not black because you wouldn't vote for him. You know, it's like, that's crazy. Like, that's the most racist shit I ever heard.
And he won the presidency.
And he won on that, you know, like, and that's the most racist shit I ever heard. And so it's like, you know, like, what is racist and what's not racist, you know, like really understanding. But this is where I'll come to like a point on this, is that to me, I truly believe that humans have been evolved over thousands and thousands of years to be able to tell bullshit when they see it. You know what I mean? Like, I truly believe that people inherently know, even if you're not going to recognize it or whatever, or choose to not listen to that intuition or gut feeling, but you know when somebody's bullshitting you. You know, like the reason that this dude ain't catching no flack is because you feel like he's real. You feel like this dude is really trying to say something of truth and honor, and that he has no malintent. And you know the opposite. You know when somebody's doing something or saying something to be racist or to be undermining or to treat you like you're less than or whatever, you know. And so even if you're a racist out there and you're like, oh, you think you're really coming out in public and like lying to it. It's not about states' rights, or it's not about racism. It's not about slavery. It's about my right to fuck it. We see you for what you are. We know why you're rocking that flag. We know what you're doing with it. You know, we know. Yep. And like, even if we can't put our finger on it or prove it, or like you said, we're just gonna feel that. And I truly think that that's the case. You know, so it's like, you can't lie out here. You know, if you are that person, you're a dumbass. You know, but I don't think that everybody who does something, puts on some type of adornment or says something word or something, is just automatically hates all black people, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, not everybody with a MAGA hat is a racist.
Yeah, 100%. And I won't go into it at this point, but I watched this one thing. I would also prescribe that a lot of the racism that we see in today's culture is not predicated on hate. I mean, actually, I would argue that since the dawn of time, all racism is stupidity. right? It's just dumbassery.
It's
just
lack of interaction and ignorance.
Exactly. On false science or on lack of interaction, like you don't know. I was watching another one of those videos where it's kind of like that dude who goes and talks to KKK members and stuff, and she goes and she talks to these different racial groups and stuff. And when confronted with their own logic of like why they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. You know what I mean? It's just literally like an old story, an old pattern, just trying to regurgitate itself. And they're like, well, you know, I was listening to one dude and he's like, it's these hybrids, man. It's the mixing of the races that weakens both races. He was like, you ever seen a pure black person? They what? He's just like, you know what I'm saying? No, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, what are you saying? Like, what? They what? What are you saying? Please, it was like they're okay for one generation, but the more generations they go down, they what? They get more cancer. They die. What? No, they're perfectly healthy and fine. They're just living life like every other person on the entire planet. We've been mixing races since the dawn of time, and you know, but they just they don't even know what they're talking about. It's just dumbassery, you know?
Nah, that's always what it is, and I think that's. People like to think about ideologies as far, especially nowadays with like politics, like, oh, it's a political ideology or even like a religious ideology. But you can have a racial ideology. Like you have this racial story in your head that it's better for your race to be pure for whatever magical amazing reasons that you can't seem to say right now. When somebody's asking you, please, I'm open-minded. I could be convinced. Convince me. Well, you know, like those videos of those guys that are like post up they'll get a little table and it says abortions are bad. Change my mind or whatever. Right. And then the people come up and they'll just be on the street. Like I see this with Will Witt whenever he does his little things for PragerU and like he'll be saying something about Trump and these old women will just walk by and they'll be like, oh, that's ridiculous. You're Trump supporter. Oh, well, tell me why. Like, why don't you support him? I don't have time. Well, I mean,
you don't even know.
Yeah, like what? Well, just one thing. Just tell me one thing about him that you don't like. It would take me all day. He's like, it's like, bitch, you don't know what you're talking about.
This is my favorite one. I've become fascinated with documentary reality TV shows that are unscripted. Specifically, Hoarders is one that I'm really enjoying. And one of the things I noticed is that you said old patterns. Yeah. And you'll get these people who've been living in this pattern for like 10, 20, 30 years, whatever. And then they have a clinical psychologist and like an expert sitting next to them like, now, Margarine, why do you want to keep this shawl that's covered in
stack of newspapers,
covered in rat shit? And they're like, well, I haven't read all the articles yet. And it's like they have these, they just regurgitate these old patterns. And it's like once you start challenging them, they get upset. They get scared, and the neural pathways start firing wrong because they're like, So when like someone's daughter is like, Mom, you have to change. You're dying. I can't bring my children in here. She's like, I live along just fine before you were here, and I'll get along just fine without you. It's like you're talking to your blood daughter who's trying to scrape your plastic bags of human feces out of your non-water working toilet, and you're telling her that she can go ahead and fuck herself. And it's like because the old pattern.
It's just you're seeing it through a defensive wall or mechanism or a blinder, you know, and it's like and so
you're put in a corner and you're just punching your way out.
And that's why I'm like that's why I wanted to bring up the Buddhist thing when we were talking about symbolism and the Nazi symbol and stuff like that. It's like the Buddhists were like, oh, what's that? This ain't good no more? All right, we just gonna let that go.
Moving on.
So, moving on.
We'll just get a little gold statue of a fat bald guy.
And it's like, you know, I feel like everybody could use a little bit of Buddhism in their life, honestly. Like if I'm a spiritual person, but I don't practice any like orthodox religion or like a constructed religion. But if I was like, if you were going to ask me based on your activities, what religion could you say that you practice? I'd be like, I'm probably a Buddhist because I just practice the idea of like not attaching to any of this stuff. In my stories about the officer, the army officer that got assaulted in his car, I said, you know, or actually it was my little snippet after my quote of the day, which I kind of tied in with that whole thing because it happened. I woke up and I saw it in somebody else's story and I was like, I gotta say something about this. And I was like, you know, this army officer had an expectation, possibly that because he was wearing his uniform, that he'd be treated a certain way. And this police officer had a certain expectation that because he was wearing his police officer uniform, he would be treated a certain way. And it's these expectations not coinciding with each other that made them upset and not like the situation that they were in. And it's like when you have these expectations of other people, of your situations, of your surroundings, of your society, and those expectations are not met, you then have a valid excuse in your mind to be upset, to be offended, to be pepper spraying people who are not threatening you, to be whatever. And it's like, if you can let go of those expectations and just start looking at things for as they are and not needing them to be whatever it is that you think you need them to be, then things are actually a lot better than they seem in your mind. Because your mind is, like I said, you know, we'll never really know the objective truth of any of these situations. But what we can do is try to be as open-minded as fair as possible. Yeah. We can at least look at it and be like, you know, this man was not threatening these police officers in any way, and they are abusing him.
You
and
could
it's
give
an
an
abuse,
explanation.
and it's an abuse of their powers. But also, this guy probably should have just gotten out of his car.
Like, I could argue either side in the debate.
I could come up on a debate. Like, this is the idea of the
side.
debate. Like, you need to be able to debate both sides because there's some truth in both sides.
100%. 100%.
Nuance, baby.
Nuance.
And if there's three words I'm taking from this part of the conversation, it's intent, context, and nuance. Right? Like, everything's not fucking black and white out here. There's a lot of gray. There's a lot of
mulattoes out there.
Yeah. Right? There's a lot of mix. There's a lot of mix. A lot of mix.
That was good.
All right.
You know, we talked about some spicy stuff. I mean, what are you guys', you know, thoughts and concluders about these two issues? You know, like what kind of takeaways have you guys had from our conversation today?
Well, the big one for me when it comes to the point you made about corporations and COVID-19 and this idea of like making policy through corporate policy, like, you know, enacting law through
corporate legislation.
Yeah, corporate legislation. Great line.
Damn,
Great
wow.
line. I'm scared of that. I see anarcho-capitalism in my future. I see, you know, McDonald's tracking me down and chipping me and being like, you can only go to McDonald's now. You know, I get scared, bro. And like, I know that it's not Blade Runner 2049. I get that. And it's like, these are all hypotheticals and I could be seen as a crazy person, but I get so scared with the vaccine passport and with the idea of corporations keeping me from my essentials or putting me into a corner until I have to get vaccinated. Like, I already feel I have to get vaccinated. So my big takeaway from that is like, I'm going to get stuck because I don't see a future where I can't get stuck and can still do all the things I want to do. With the racism topic that we were talking about, with essentially what is your intent? What is the context? Like what makes it racist? You brought up some great points today. One of the ones that really stuck with me was just this idea of the intent and the context and the nuance of it all. Because like, we've had this discussion about singing along to music. We've had this discussion about, you know, what Papa John's did, which is referencing the word by actually saying the word instead of saying a reference to the word. And it's like, we are in this very delicate clown world time where we're all holding the little sticks with the plates spinning on them. And if you sneeze and it sounds like the N-word, you're canceled.
Yeah, fucking done.
No more pizza for you.
Yeah. So I'm worried in both senses. I'm worried about the COVID thing and the passports, and I'm worried about the cancel culture. And maybe those are irrational fears, but looking at everything around me and how many people have to tiptoe this line every day on social media and in celebrity, it worries me. You know, I want to write a book. And if my book becomes popular, I don't want them coming for me like they did with the guy from Ender's Game or J.K. Rowling.
Yeah,
Facts.
100%. Where I'm at with it too, with that thing is like, I'm afraid of fear at this point in our society, right? Like, it's like the level of fear that we're rising to over people who don't get vaccinated or people who don't want to do the thing that everybody else wants to do, or the people who might be racist. You know, it's like we're starting to live in this hyper sensitive, hyper afraid society where everything that, like, it's like I said, if anybody does anything that's a difference or that could be concerning to you, you automatically have to box that person up, or like you have to, like you said, cancel them, get them out
Rip
of
his
here.
jacket off.
Yeah, you know, right?
Like,
You know,
let's
like it's like, and so you're seeing that in the sense of, like you said, corporations, in the sense of just boxing you up, you know what I mean? And like trying to grab you up and trying to make sure that you do the thing that everybody wants you to do. Whether, because like I said, I don't know what's up with this pandemic. Like, I don't know how dangerous it is. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. You know, it could very well be that they're trying to protect you, but I also feel like they were trying to protect you from terrorism too. You know, it's like they're always trying to protect you from something, you know, and it's that protection that leads to a lot of us like giving up our rights and losing rights and stuff. And you know, I can see this situation getting out of hand a little bit with the corporations, you know, like I just think that, like I said, they've garnished so much more power. They've gotten so much bigger over decades and stuff. And you can see a world where you've talked about, like, you know, McDonald's having their own police force, you know what I mean? And like things like that, where your roads are privatized and everything, and the corporations.
This is Burger King, open up.
Right. You know, that they own everything.
The shit out of me, dude.
And then in time, you know, usurp our government, you know, and usurp our ability to vote or to have a say in these things. It could just become very much like, you know, Gatorade owns everything. You know, and like they'll tell you what to drink and not to drink. Like,
and
we're now watering all crops with Gatorade.
Yeah, you turn on your, that's straight from Idiocracy. You turn on your fucking faucet. It's like, oh, they put in red today. Awesome.
So I worry about those things. You know, I think that the Matrix is kind of coming, and we really got to, you know, don't be afraid to assess. You know, assess for yourself everything and every situation. That's what I always prescribe to people is, you know, do your own research. Come up with your own opinion, and then, you know, do whatever you feel is right for you. You know, whether that be to get a vaccine, not to get a vaccine, to be, you know, afraid of a certain person or not, or whatever, you know, but do the research. Don't just automatically assume that they're racist just because it was a black guy and a white guy, you know, like, you know, figure that out, you know, really dive into that and get into the context and the nuance of the situations and stuff. So.
For me personally, my takeaways from the first section where, with the points that I brought up is, you know, we talked about a lot about the power that these corporations have. And I think that in the same way with the government, it's always important to remember that we are the ones who gave them that amount of power. And so I think that for me, it always comes down to, you know, like, if you are worried about these things because of how you want your lifestyle to be, and you have to make a decision for yourself, kind of like you said, you have to assess the pros and cons. How much control do you want these corporations or the government to have over your life? Do you want Amazon to make you get secret serum in your arm so that you can go to the store? Do you want the government, you know, doing all of these, you know, taking your money from your paycheck and blowing up children in other countries with it? You know, and you have to make those decisions about how much convenience you want in your life, how much ease you want in your life, and how much responsibility you're willing to take on to avoid those things happening. And as far as with the racism thing, it's always just about, for me, it's more about focusing on the together. Like, how can we foster togetherness rather than, even if there is a shit ton of racism going on out here, that's not going to bring people together. Always focusing on the racism. Instead of the news always highlighting, oh, this racist cop killed this black guy, maybe we should be like, look at this awesome white cop saving these black children from a fire or something like that. Like, look at all these amazing examples of people of multitudes of different races helping each other out, because that narrative brings people together and the other narrative divides people. And we see what kind of problems happen when human beings divide themselves amongst whatever kind of lines. You know, you get war, you get fucking genocides, you get all kinds of crazy shit. Whereas if we look to the points of how we're together rather than the parts that we're separated, and there are much more parts of us being together. Just, I mean, we talked about this in an episode, like, there's a difference between what food you eat and what food I eat, but we eat food. You know, there's a difference between what skin color you are and what skin color I am, but we got skin.
I bet you breathe though.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we all breathe. We all drink water. So it's like, if you focus on the similarities, they're actually much more profound too. They're not just more of them, but they're actually deeper and on a more in-depth level than just the surface level shit that we argue about every day. And so, yeah, those are my takeaways for today. And in the comments, let us know what you guys think about these two topics. Are you worried about the amount of power that corporations have? Do you live in a cabin? Are you getting this from satellite internet right now?
How's your garden doing?
Yeah, did you get that gun? Did you start that garden?
Yes,
But always we always want to engage with you guys. It's not just about our opinions or what we think or the stories that we bring up. If you got interesting stories that relate, let us know. Drop them in the comments. We'd love to check it out.
We comment back.
Yeah, we comment back. We try
Each
to
of us comment back.
We're interactive.
Very
people.
different responses from each of us,
depending on who's talking.
depending on who sees the email first. So till next time, we appreciate you and we hope you catch us again. Peace.